with a roll call, please.
Mayor Seaman?
Here.
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Moulton?
Here.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Here.
Councilmember Bauer?
Here.
Councilmember Burgell is absent tonight.
Excellent. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Castellano, would you like to lead that today for us?
Sure thing. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under all, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we did not have closed session today, so there's nothing to report out. So we will move on to our mayor's announcements. And I'll just talk a little bit about some of the things that I have been working on since we last met. Last Tuesday, we had a meeting for all of our boards, commissions, commissioners, board members, and committee members. I think it's one of the first sort of semi-formal trainings that we've done, at least in my recollection. And we had over 40 people participate in that meeting that serve as volunteers to the city of Eureka. So I was so grateful to see so much participation, and also really thankful to the staff for showing up and helping everybody to sort of get the big picture about what we are doing at the city of Eureka and how their different committees and commissions and boards fit into that. I'm also looking forward to just more communication with those groups as we're moving forward. So before we do our strategic visioning, then I'll meet with all of the committee chairs, and then we'll do it again next year when it's time for terms to come up again and talk about if we have new folks interested in participating. We are pretty well filled up on our committees and commissions now, except for the transportation safety, which is a real strong priority for City of Eureka. For the council, we are all very into transportation safety. So if you are also into it, please consider applying for the Transportation Safety Commission. Another thing that I have been doing is working with First Five and Changing Tides to look at some sustainable programs for the childcare system. And we'll learn a little bit more about what I've been doing with public health and maybe looking into some dental stuff. So that's going to come up in a few minutes. Before that, though, I would like to introduce Sierra Dillon to talk about our next group of youth council. So hello, good to see you.
Hi, it's great to see you too. Robin, would you like to start, actually?
Sure, thank you, Sarah.
Sorry, Robin, I just want to say Miles told me to introduce Sierra. So
no, that's okay. We've got a lot of well-rounded players at the table for this program, no problem. So I was just going to quickly say that this is our second term of the new era of Youth Council, and we are so excited to have all of the members here tonight. So I'll hand it off to Sierra to do some brief introductions, and this will not be the last time we'll be seeing them. So thank you.
Thanks, Robin. So good evening, Council. It's so nice to see everyone. I'm Sierra Spear-Dillon, the coordinator of Eureka's Youth Council. Like Robin said, we started this program's first term in 2020, so it's still very, very new, but now here we are at 2022. The last term, despite COVID, it was still very successful, so we have a lot of high hopes for this upcoming term. So for the second term, just letting you guys know, Eureka Youth Council is a unique program, and it's designed to give Eureka teens the opportunity to not only learn about local city government, but also work on 3 major projects during a 1-year term with the purpose of addressing a community cause or concern. And again, this is going to be coming from a youth's perspective. And the goal is that selected members will engage with local leaders and feel empowered, while at the same time evolving their critical thinking skills and developing the civic leadership skills needed to represent their generation. And, these are going to be some of the same kids that, in 5, 10, 20 years, maybe leading our city. So for the 2022 term, this year we have 6 members. So we're so very excited. We've had 2 meetings so far this year, and the youth council members are just phenomenal. So they are Alexandra Nielsen, Asher Russo, Kate Fazio, Rory Bickmore, Rafael Hernandez, and Solveig Lassonde. So they are all here tonight, and actually only one of them has ever even attended a city council meeting before at all. So for 5 of them, this is completely new. So we're going to go in alphabetical order, and they are going to introduce themselves and just tell you why they wanted to join youth council and be a part of improving our community. So Alexandra.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandra Nilsson. I'm a junior in high school at St. Bernard's High School in Eureka. Thank you all so much for having us here. I know we're all really excited to be here. I am very excited to be a part of youth council because I have never been to a city council meeting before, and I'm excited to learn more about my local government. I was born and raised here, so I feel like I should be a little more involved. And I'm really excited to do some meaningful change in my community that I'm actually able to see. So I'm very excited for youth council, and I'm very excited to see what this meeting will entail. Thank you.
Great job, Alexandra. Asher, would you like to go next?
My name is Asher Russo. I am a freshman at Eureka High School, and I applied for youth council because I think it will be a very fun and educational experience.
Awesome, Asher. Okay, and then we have Kate Fazio. Kate?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Fazio. I'm a sophomore at Eureka High School, and I'm really excited to see where Youth Council will be taking us this year. This is my first year doing.
Okay, we can't hear you. You weren't on mute, but the voice totally went away.
All right, great job, Kate. Okay, Rory, would you like to go?
Hi, I'm Rory Bickmore. I am a freshman at St. Bernard's High School.
Something's wrong with her video too.
Rory, can you try to turn your video off and maybe we can hear you then? He froze.
Rory, would you like to try to go again?
Sure thing. I'm Rory Bickmore. I'm a freshman at St. Bernard's High School in Eureka. I joined Eureka Youth Council because I moved here about 3 years ago and I just fell in love with Eureka. So I wanted to know more about the inner workings of the council and the legislature and see just how I can make a difference in this community that I get to call home.
Great job, Rory. Thank you. Rafael, would you like to go next?
My name is Rafael Hernandez. I'm a senior at SO Barnum, and I applied for Youth Council to get more familiar with the ins and outs of city government and help my community out.
Awesome, Rafael. Thank you. And Solveig, would you like to finish out?
Hi, I'm Solveig Lassonde. I'm a sophomore at Eureka High, and I'm excited for Youth Council because it's creating a chance for youth voices to be heard, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone on all the different projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Solveig. So thank you, everyone. And council, if you have any questions or ideas for youth council, please reach out to Robin and I. We would love to coordinate with as many of you as possible so we can give this youth council the best year of their lives.
Excellent. Well, it's really great to meet all of you guys. Congratulations on your appointments. And I really love that we have some people who've been here for a lot of years and some people that are new to the community. So you bring in all different perspectives, and that's always good to hear. We will be in touch, I'm sure, Sierra, to see what exciting projects we can get them working on.
Natalie, you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could hear from Kate again, since the internet's a little funky tonight. So you cut out when you were speaking. I just wanted to give you a full chance to explain why you're on youth council. Would you mind trying again?
I'd love to go again.
Yeah, sorry about that. My mom is on the meet too, so we're kind of second. I just really like doing youth council. I'm excited to see where this project's going, and I just really want to see how youth can be more effective in the community, and how our ideas can get out there, and how we can really help.
Great job, Kate.
Anybody else have any questions or words of advice for our young, fearless leaders? Councilmember Castellano, then Councilmember Bauer.
Firstly, thank you. And, you know, I think I can speak for all of council. We really enjoyed the presence and insight from our first youth council. And so it's just exciting that you're going to be part of this process. I do hope there's some time that we can actually, you know, meet, whether it's Zoom or whatever, and have, you know, just kind of more of a conversation with the youth council members. And just know that, like any citizens, you can reach out to us via email or phone, and we definitely welcome your queries, or, you know, if you want to talk with us or interview us or whatever. I think we're all very open to that.
Right on. Councilmember Bauer.
No, I just want to say thank you for wanting to be active in our community. You know, you're the future, and I'm a big advocate for climate change or dealing with climate change. And I just heard a good quote the other day. I forget who said it, unfortunately. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that somebody else will save it. And that's where it comes to you. You know, you have to be involved in everything that goes on. So thank you. And I look forward to working with you. I have some ideas, and I'll reach out to you guys.
Yes, we're certainly hoping that this, you know, starts virtually and then ends up with us all together in the same room, as opposed to the last group, which had 1 or 2 meetings and then everything shut down. So did you have something else, Councilmember Arroyo?
I did, yeah. I just wanted to also express my thanks and appreciation and share with you, you know, if you're going to stick around for much of this meeting, you may hear some strong words that people have and differing opinions. And that's sort of the nature of our meetings, is people come to elected officials and they really tell us exactly what they think. And sometimes, you know, it can be a little surprising at first. So I just wanted to share that I'm grateful that you're here. And if you want to debrief about what the experience is like and kind of what it's like sitting in the hot seat, I'm always receptive to hearing from you individually too. And I know we all are. So thanks for being here. And I hope you'll get a lot out of hearing some of the dialogue tonight.
Nice. All right. And the next item on our agenda is proclamation. This is National Children's Dental Health Month. Councilmember Arroyo, would you like to read it? If not, I have it in front of me, but I always like to share the time.
I would love to read it. Just give me 1 second to follow that link so I can read along. All right. So this proclamation is in recognition of National Children's Dental Health Month, which is February 2022. Whereas February is National Children's Dental Health Month, a time to dedicate ourselves to support our most vulnerable Humboldt County citizens, including pregnant women and children, to achieve better dental health outcomes. And whereas oral health is part of overall health and is particularly important for pregnant women, for their health and health of their babies. And whereas all teeth are important for eating, talking, and smiling, including baby teeth. And whereas 1 in 4 children in Humboldt County will start kindergarten with untreated dental decay. And whereas we commend the dental professionals in Humboldt who provide dental care to the most vulnerable and simultaneously acknowledge the dental workforce shortage that has created limited dental access for pregnant women and to specialty care. And whereas babies are not born with the germs that cause tooth decay, and oral bacteria is contagious and can be passed from mothers and other caregivers to baby. And whereas the American Dental Association, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the National Maternal and Child Oral Health Resource Center have developed consensus statements outlining the safety and necessity of dental care and education during pregnancy. And whereas it is imperative that we support local pregnant women to establish good oral hygiene practices for themselves before their baby is born by navigating them to the dentist, encouraging travel planning to get there, and providing information on good prenatal nutrition, oral hygiene, and how to care for the oral health of their children. And whereas practices such as wiping babies' gums after feeding, lifting the lip to assess health of teeth and gums, brushing newly emerged teeth with fluoride toothpaste 2 times a day, limiting sweet drinks, fruit juice, candy, dried fruits, and other sweets that can cause tooth decay, and making and keeping preventive dental health checkups beginning at the first tooth or child's first birthday are important for success. Now, therefore, I, Natalie Arroyo, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby proclaim, oops, there's a little bit of a typo here, do call on the citizens, government agencies, community stakeholders, and medical and dental providers of Humboldt County to work together to address oral health disparities in Humboldt County, beginning with our most vulnerable residents, including pregnant women.
Yay.
That was a robust one. And yes, thank you very much for those who brought that forward.
It was and it combines things that I'm just truly passionate about, which is children and dental health. And we have Laura McEwen here to receive it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Seaman. Thank you, Council Member Arroyo. I'm Laura McEwen. I am the HHS Program Services Coordinator at Public Health, and I oversee the oral health programs. And we're very honored that you are proclaiming February as National Children's Dental Health Month. Certainly, oral health is really important. We always say we need to put the mouth back in the body. We forget that it is a really important part of overall health. And thank you for acknowledging that. And I also want to just mention the importance of oral health on much more than just health. It also impacts workforce readiness, mental health issues, substance use disorder, and other quality of life issues such as homelessness and housing. And I'm really honored that Mayor Seaman will be working on these issues at a community catalyst meeting. So we start to really raise that awareness about the impacts of oral health on our larger quality of life issues here in Humboldt County, and with a goal of eventually getting an oral surgeon to Humboldt County who accepts Medi-Cal dental. And so we're really excited about that. Anything else, Mayor Seaman, you want to add to that, or?
No, I do just want to say that that sounds, you know, one oral surgeon is not enough, but it's a step in the right direction. And some of the statistics that we've seen about the impacts that not having dental health has on our community it's pretty staggering. So as you know, I will keep you informed as we get more information, and keep your eyes open and, you know, brush teeth. Especially if you can't get to a dentist, make sure you're doing that preventative care. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to the whole City Council. We're really appreciative of this proclamation.
It matters to our citizens, so thank you. Next on our agenda, we have the public comment period. So this is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda to speak for 3 minutes. And it looks like we have somebody who's raised their hand already. So Ashley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, and I just wanted to talk on the, ongoing, vaccine mandates that the city's still doing. And my wife used to have a job with you, but that ended, and she still hears from other people who work there. And guess there's still a lot of people, despite full vaccination and boosters, a lot of people going out sick for COVID. And I don't know if any of you had watched the panel that Ron Johnson did. Is like the second opinion on COVID-19, but they had information from the Department of Defense. So it's like their version of the VAERS system. And what that is, it's not, the downside that people complain about the VAERS is that, anybody can submit it. Anybody can submit that data. But with the DoD stuff, it is only submitted by military doctors. So there's a short 2-minute clip here I want you to watch, okay?
We don't do video clips, I'm sorry.
You don't? Oh.
No. But you can send us a link if you'd like.
Okay, well, you should watch it on your own, because what they go on to say is that, like, from the military doctors, their findings, that like heart attacks, heart conditions, they've gone up 300%. That's 3 times as much since the onset of the vaccinations. Neurological issues, they've went up 10 times, like 1,000%, 10 times since the onset of the vaccinations. Okay, so there are real, like, just like the VAERS, how people dismiss it. Oh, that can't be anything. It's real stuff going on, and you're forcing it on your employees. And right now, I know you look up at the news, and they're not really reporting on like the $500,000 or 500,000 truckers that have entered the city of Ottawa up in Canada, causing gridlock where like no one can move. And it's not over weather conditions. It's not over fuel. It's over this same thing that the city of Eureka is doing. Okay. So I think you might just want to get ahead of it, and because eventually it's going to come back. So that's just my 2 cents warning, because it's going to boomerang here. So think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sebastian from Humboldt Bay Provision.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my business and some of those things that I do in Old Town to help foster my business, and how things in Old Town are going around for my business, because that's what I'm privy to. So at some point, I'm not sure if it's very current data or not, but at some point there was some Caltrans data that said that there was between 25 to 30,000 cars that traverse through Eureka every day, as far as making their way either north or south on the Broadway or 4th and 5th Street. I don't know if that data is that current right now. And my business as it is, based on some of my like charge card reporting and some of those kind of things, I rely heavily on folks coming in from out of the area who have an opportunity to stop as part of that traffic flow, and maybe just enjoy a quick stop at my place over on 2nd and G in Old Town. And my main concern is that as things are going, I'm not trying to talk about stuff that's necessarily on the agenda, but I just wanted the council to consider options for more parking and other ways to maybe make it so that there's a better options for local folks to get into the Old Town area that have to be there for prolonged periods of time, rather than being in there taking up parking if they can help it. I understand that there are residential people there that definitely need to park there and that kind of thing. And I also understand that there's a lot of, city offices and those kind of things that don't necessarily have parking for, or county offices as well, that don't necessarily have parking lots for all the people that come into their, to their job for the day and some of that kind of stuff. So they're kind of parking all over the place. But as far as that flow of traffic that comes through on a daily basis, we really need those people to stop and be able to park easily in order for them to maybe, drop, get a sandwich, drop off some other things, and just be able to, conduct commerce in our city. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Dukes.
Hi. I think maybe you all are not thanked enough. And I wanted to thank you as a member of the Energy Committee for the fantastic meet and greet that we had last Tuesday. And I think Mayor Seaman, it was at your instigation. So kudos to you. Kudos also to all of the many, many city employees who showed up after hours and sat through explanations of each other's jobs that they've probably heard or read 10,000 times, and they continued to look vaguely interested. So good for them. I was particularly pleased with my personal staff liaison, Kelly Allen, who did a stupendous job of explaining what the Energy Committee is trying to do. I am so looking forward to working more closely with you. And I just wanted to thank you. And one more thing, I walk around Eureka a lot. I will be discussing broken sidewalks and crazy drivers and dangerous intersections at another time, because this is all gratitude tonight. But thank you for the work that has been done on Henderson and Harris. I know you probably got a lot of gripes about it, and I have to admit that finding a sign saying sidewalk closed, crossover, and the exact same sign on the other side of the street left me kind of puzzled, but I managed to live through it all. And so thank you very much to Public Works for getting that done. And thank you all for your work. You catch a lot of flack, and some of it will be coming from me in the future, but not tonight. Just thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your service on the Energy Committee. Do we have any other? I don't see any other hands.
I'm going through. Cornelius has his hand physically raised, so please go ahead.
Cornelius.
Good evening, fellow citizens and council. This Zoom meeting shows clearly that this is not an efficient solution. People tried to partake on the last Zoom meeting. 20 people were signed up. Only 3 got to talk. We hear so often about the Brown Act. We, the public, should have access to address our grievances to our local government. Neither this Zoom, which is spotty at times, the internet is not reliable. Many people can't access it. A friend of mine doesn't have the necessary data plan to access the Zoom meeting. And last time people were just not called up to speak, although they were lined up. So for example, my friend James Graham. Regardless of that, my usual topic is the downfall of old and downtown. Seeing the feces, the needles, I applaud the youth council that is interested in city politics, and especially our youth should be aware of the imploding tourism industry and of the fallout of the opioid epidemic. We still need a water and airtight concept for the needle litter that we are facing every day, which is a huge danger for toddlers, children, everyone along the waterfront. Yeah, so those are the pressing issues. Downfall of Eureka, tourism imploding, and nobody's stopping there anymore. I pull $0 days, 3 times a week because tourists just avoid Old Town like the plague. which they might catch down there, by the way. So we really need new concepts to make Eureka safe again, and as well as to make Eureka attractive again, so that people will start stopping again and start utilizing Eureka and Olden Downtown as a travel destination. In any other case, this town will turn into a ghost town. We also need an extension for at least 30 days to discuss the proposed property switches for the housing projects that you guys are planning along 101, turning Olden Downtown even further into a socially difficult area. You guys got to come up with concepts, because the business owners in Olden Downtown are pretty much at their wits' end, at their nerves' ends. We deal with crazies every single day. We deal with their feces. We deal with their urine stench all over Old Town. People are fed up. People avoid Old Town. Come up with the concept and make Eureka safe again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cornelius. Is there anybody else that has a...
James Graham has turned on his video, and go ahead, James.
Hi, Mayor. I'm sorry our meeting didn't go as planned. Maybe it's my fault for not knowing there was an extra room where we were supposed to meet. However, I did talk to you on Messenger, and you told me that people are telling you how safe Eureka is, and you get compliments on it all the time, which I find that really hard to believe. So I did my own survey, and I have a few comments that were left on my thread here. One of them is definitely unsafe, follow the facts. Another one simply states not safe. Unsafe unless you are armed is another one. Not safe, feel safer staying at home. I hate going to Eureka. This town I was born and raised in is no longer safe. Disgusting to drive through, never mind walking through. And not safe, coming from the north. You notice the trash and camps and druggies right away. Great first impression. Those are just the 7 that I wrote off. I'd like to challenge you, if you want to ask people on your own thread, and see what kind of answers you come up with. I'd love to see that, because everybody knows it's not safe to walk the Old Town Eureka or anywhere in Eureka. And you told me, I have it on my messenger, that there's bicycle police, and there's constant presence of police vehicles in Old Town. I was parked there for 40 minutes, and I didn't see one policeman on a bicycle or not one cruiser. And I drive through Old Town all the time. And what I did see was a domestic dispute going on, and people that would scare the living daylights out of anybody walking down the street with a blanket over them. You've got mentally ill drug addicts that aren't getting any help. They're sleeping in front of businesses. You can drive through Old Town and see it. The garbage that is through Old Town is unacceptable. There's bags of garbage, shopping carts full of crap, turned over, crap all over the walls. I mean, I could show you pictures of them. And, I'm a full-grown man. I did not feel safe parked out there waiting for our meeting with my 2 little children in the car. And I could just imagine a nice older lady or somebody like that trying to walk through there with the people that walk up and down them sidewalks. It's intimidating. It's scary. It's confrontations waiting to happen. Could get stabbed by any one of them any time. They're out of their minds, and you're not doing a damn thing to help any of them. You're just painting artwork over a Band-Aid stain, and it's getting old. I know, damn good and well the place is unsafe, and yet you say it's so safe, and you get compliments constantly. I'd like to see who's complimenting on that. You guys need to step up and do something about the needle litter, the crime. I suggested bicycle cops 24 hours a day in Old Town Eureka and on the waterfront trail. People do not feel safe. You have business owners that are afraid to speak up because they know you'll do something. The council will do something in some way to them. You have state employees that are afraid to speak up. It's been 3 minutes,
James.
Okay, well, I think you get
Mr. Graham.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anybody else?
So to ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak, if you can unmute yourself and let me know that you would like to say something. I don't have a lot of video going on right now, but we want to ensure that everyone gets an opportunity.
All right. It sounds like we're not having any responses, so we will close public comment at this time, and we will move on to public hearings. Item E1, Senior Planner Getz about the January 2022 zoning code update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is what we're referring to as the January 2022 zoning code update. This is the third modification of the text amendment that adopted the current zoning code in 2019. This amendment applies to the inland portion of the city, which is the brightly colored area on this map. The blue line on the map delineates the coastal zone, and the black dotted line indicates the city boundaries. The zoning code for the inland portion of the city, also known as Chapter 155, was comprehensively updated in June 2019. Since then, 2 cleanup amendments have been adopted, referred to as the June 2020 and June 2021 zoning code updates. The next update was slated for June 2022, but the state's adoption of SB 9 and SB 478 prompted city staff to initiate an earlier update. So what does this amendment do? In a nutshell, Senate Bill 9 was approved by the governor in September of 2021 and went into effect on January 1st, 2022. It adds 2 new sections to the California Government Code, which increase development potential in single-family zoning districts, which are the yellow areas on the map. The law amends the Subdivision Map Act to allow property owners to split single-family zone properties into 2 lots, and it allows them to do this ministerially without any discretionary review. Staff is proposing to call this an urban lot split. The law also adds a new government code section which requires cities to allow property owners to build 2 attached or detached primary residential units on each single-family zone lot. And staff is proposing to call this a second single-family home. Again, the permitting process must be ministerial without discretionary review. So in general, for residential estate and residential low zone parcels, without using the allowances provided in SB 9, 1 single family home, 1 junior accessory dwelling unit or ADU, and 1 ADU are allowed. Under SB 9, a second single family home can be allowed. Then, if you use the subdivision provision provided in SB 9, the law says you can build 2 single family homes on the newly created lot. The law also says we don't have to allow any accessory dwelling units when they've used the urban lot split. However, staff is proposing when an urban lot split is used that the owner be allowed either 2 single family homes along with a junior accessory dwelling unit, or 1 single family home, 1 junior accessory dwelling unit, and 1 accessory dwelling unit. Senate Bill 478, which also became effective on January 1st, 2022, prescribes that housing developments, which are defined as projects that consist either of residential uses only, or they're mixed use developments consisting of residential and non-residential uses, where at least 2/3 of the square footage is designated for residential use, or it includes transitional or supportive housing. Now, all those types of housing developments have a minimum floor area ratio that was set by the state. So again, effective January 1st, the city must allow floor area ratios that are at least 1.0 for housing developments with 3 to 7 dwelling units, and at least 1.25 for housing developments with 8 to 10 units. Staff is proposing to change the maximum floor area ratio to 1.25 for both the residential medium and residential high zone districts. The floor areas in the the floor area ratios in the mixed use zones are already compliant with SB 478. However, this change then triggers the need to change another part of the code, and that would be the maximum height for primary structures on lots between lots with a lot area between 2,000 and 5,999 square feet in both the R2 and R3 zones. Staff is proposing that the maximum height for primary structures be increased to 35 feet without regard to the existing lot size. Further, staff is recommending that existing height limitations be applied to detached accessory structures based on the lot area. And that's in order to retain some height differential requirements in the R2 and R3 zones. Otherwise, we could end up with 35-foot tall buildings across the board in R2 and R3 zones. And lastly, there are several amendments that are not specifically related to SB 9 or SB 478 that we decided to bring forward in this update instead of waiting until June 2022. Most of the general code cleanup changes correct references and make other copy edits to clarify code provisions. However, there are a couple of changes to note. Updates include language clarifying dwellings created pursuant to SB 9 may not be used as vacation rentals, and that comes from the state law. We're also memorializing how vacation rental permits may continue or lapse. And we've also added minor modifications for clarity to language in the ADUs as vacation rentals section of the code. Next, protected trees that are dead or dying are exempt from the need for a tree permit with proper justification. And a change to allow property owners to temporarily live in an RV on a vacant lot when they have an active building permit for a new single family home has been added. And we've also changed the code to allow RVs to be used for emergency housing during a declared shelter crisis when the RV is located on city-owned or leased properties and are specifically designated under the city shelter crisis declaration. In the residential subdivision section of the code, in addition to adding regulations for urban lot splits from SB 9, language is proposed pertaining to small lot subdivisions. Staff is proposing a maximum lot area for parcels resulting from small lot subdivisions, while also accepting the lot that contains an existing primary residence from the lot area maximum. Finally, staff is recommending that the word and definition for existing be deleted from the defined terms in the glossary. The reasoning and analysis for all of these recommended changes is included in attachment A in your staff report. And staff is recommending that you hold a public hearing and introduce a bill to approve the January 2022 zoning code update. And I'm always happy to answer any questions I can, and I have a recommended motion whenever you're ready.
Okay, does anybody have questions for Senior Planner Getz on this item? Councilmember Arroyo.
I'm just curious if throughout our zoning code is the term permitted use. I'm looking at the table in the proposed changes, and is it defined elsewhere that permitted use means ministerially permitted? I mean, is that information helpful to people, or do you think that permitted use conveys that? What are your thoughts on that?
So a permitted use, that term could either be a principally or a conditionally permitted use. So we usually use the P or the C to identify whether it's principally permitted or conditionally permitted. So I think we're good with the way that we've got it listed here now.
Okay. I just found myself wondering about that, if, you know, if that's defined elsewhere in the code, but it's I think it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody from council have any other questions? Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. And thanks for the report. I know that, you know, at the state level, this legislation and change has been getting quite a bit of attention. And I'm just curious, you know, that this could mean kind of big shifts in how people might buy property or you know, build onto their properties. So it's kind of a two-part question. Does it seem like there are already folks who are aware of this and interested in it? And then how are we going to convey these changes to the public? You know, yeah.
So yes, there are people who are already aware, and some are already in the process of trying to figure out how to move forward, utilizing the benefits that you can get from SB 9. We have a property owner who's applied for a preliminary subdivision and then has a second phase of his project where he will come in and apply for an urban lot split once he's created those 2 new lots. We also have somebody who's looking at the possibility of using SB 9 to actually legalize some illegally created dwelling units on their site. So it'll be great to have those safe for the public and the tenants and good to go. As far as letting folks know that this is available, anytime they call us and they ask questions about what can I do with my property, or I have this, can I do that kind of questions that we get a lot. Staff is including information regarding SB2, letting them know that that possibility is out there for either now or in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer and then Arroyo.
Just a quick question, Principal Planner gets, or did we do an analysis of how many lots this may affect? I mean, does it affect, you know, some lots, the house occupies the whole thing, but did we look at that? I'm just curious, is it 100 lots? Is it 500? Maybe it's immaterial to our city, but it seems like it would produce a lot of housing in the end.
I think that the possibility certainly is there, and I'm looking for that information. I think we have something to kind of answer that. Hang on.
Do you want to ask a question while she's looking, Leslie, or Councilmember Castellano?
Well, I know in the agenda summary there is something saying about 4,006 more R1 parcels would be eligible for lot splits under current regulations. I don't know if that's the same question now.
Yeah, I mean, I think eligibility is one thing, but realistically, you know, can you, and maybe that's a question you could answer later. It's not probably that important to this discussion.
Right. So my vague recollection, and I apologize, it's not popping up for me here real easily, but we have approximately 10,000 residentially zoned lots in the city. I would say that probably the majority, or certainly more than half of those lots, are in the R1 or are in the R1 or the residential low zone districts. So there are certainly lots that are already, you know, less than the minimum lot size, which is currently 5,000 square feet. But the possibility may exist for a 4,000 square foot lot to further subdivide down into 2,000 square foot lots, for example. So I think that the possibility certainly exists for additional dwelling units to be created as a result of this. And certainly because you have the ability to create a second residential unit on a site, along with being able to do accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, I think there's a lot of options out there for folks who might be interested in going down any of those roads.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Arroyo, you had a question.
Thank you. Principal Planner Getz, could you help me understand the explanation about removing the term existing? I'm having a hard time fully getting the description that's in attachment A. Could you briefly touch on that?
I can give it a shot, certainly. So the definition of existing in the code as it currently stands is anything that was created prior to June of 2019. So anything that existed prior to the current version of the zoning code being updated. If you apply that definition to, let's say, a house that was built in 2021, even though it physically exists today, by the definition in our code, it's not an existing house. So if we just delete the term existing, there's no instances in the code where the term existing isn't defined by some other date that it would mean that we couldn't use the normal definition of existing. Does that help at all?
It does. So I think what I'm understanding is we're just using English now. We're just going to assume that existing means something that exists versus defining that by a specific date.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's yeah, I got a little caught up on the way it was described, but that makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before I open up the public hearing? All right, seeing none, I will now open up the public hearing for anybody in the audience who'd like to make comment on this item. Do we have any? I'm scrolling through people. Do you see anything, Assistant City Manager Powell?
I do not.
All right. Then I will close the public hearing and bring it back for a motion or discussion. Councilmember Bauer.
I'll make the motion to waive full reading, read by title only, and introduce bill number 1010-CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka amending portions of Eureka Municipal Code, Chapter 155 for the January 2022 zoning code update.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on this item? All right. Thank you, Senior Manager Planner, for your work on this. And I'll go ahead and ask for a roll call vote. Oh, Councilmember Castellano has a comment. Discussion item.
Well, I just want to say thanks, but also it would be interesting as this moves forward, just to, maybe when we do our next zoning code update, to kind of hear back if projects are moving forward and things like that. It's always, I don't know, I like seeing how the new codes get implemented. So.
All right. And with that, we will do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Excellent. All right. So we are ready to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. Did anybody want to pull anything? I did not hear of anything before the meeting. All right. Do I have a motion then?
So moved. I move approval of the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All righty. Roll call vote on that, please.
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell absent. Motion carries.
All right. Our next item is G, legislative action correspondence. Does anybody have anything that is urgently needs to be submitted for legislative correspondence before the next meeting that we did not know about yet? All right. Then we will move on to H, which is ordinances and resolutions. And we are going to start with H1, exempt surplus property resolution, and I will read here from City Manager Slattery.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen. Get this into display mode. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this item before you guys tonight is a recommendation to adopt a resolution exempting 10 parcels from surplus land legislation based on Government Code Section 37364. We've heard a lot of public input related to this, and I wanted to clarify one thing that I'm hearing often is that by exempting these properties, it's stating that the city has no use for them, and that is not the case. Surplus land legislation passed by the state in 2020 requires you to go through a process to surplus the property. The city the staff is recommending to exempt these properties based on a government code section that states that 80% of the land area will be used for housing and that 40% of the units will be used for affordable housing. And that's how we are exempting these properties from surplus land legislation that the state passed in 2020. We used to go off of our own ordinance related to surplus property, but the state legislation that was passed incorporated the charter cities in having to follow that surplus land legislation. So for a little background related to this, the housing element was adopted by council in December of 2019. At that time, the housing element had 13 properties that were listed in it to reach our regional housing needs allocation. Once that was approved, we set up a schedule to putting out these properties to an RFP to develop affordable housing to meet the RHNA, which is the regional housing needs allocation. The first RFP went out and was awarded to Link Properties in October of 2020. After that had happened in May of 2021, staff set up a meeting with Housing and Community Development, people that oversee the housing element, and had discussions about the housing element. And at that time, it was brought to our attention about this surplus land legislation and that the way that we were going about putting these properties into RFP weren't in compliance with that, and that we needed to be in compliance with that. So we were supposed to put our RFP out in July of 2021, the second RFP. And because of this finding, as well as another finding that we discovered, we weren't able to put it out to RFP because we needed to research what it took to put the property out to abide by the surplus land legislation. At that time, we also found out that 2 of the properties that were approved in the housing element were not eligible to be developed as housing. And so we not only needed to deal with the surplus land legislation, but we also needed to find more units in order to be in compliance with our RHNA. So in order to do that, we had meetings back in May with the public, discussed transferring a property. At the January 4th meeting, council approved the transfer of properties for 3 of the parking lots that were proposed in the original housing element, with 4 parcels owned by a private property owner. That did increase the number of units that we were at, but we're still short the number of units. So in the original housing element, these were the original 12 properties. The first 3 listed, Sunny and Myrtle, 8th and G, and 6th and M, were the ones that were a part of Link's proposal, and those are already under contract. And then the rest of them are listed there as they state now. Currently, as I stated, Cooper Gulch and the Sheriff's Woodlot were 2 properties that were listed in the original housing element. There are deed restrictions on those properties that don't allow them for development. That's kind of how we got in this situation, along with the Surplus Land Act. So currently, the housing element under contract has those Link properties, and what's being proposed tonight is to exempt the following 10 parcels from the Exempt Surplus Land Act so that they can be either put out to an RFP or dealt with directly with a private developer. Those properties are 6th and L and 5th and D streets, which were included in the original housing element, as well as Broadway and McCullens, which was included in the original housing element. The following are all new properties to make up for the losses of the other properties. 3rd and G is one, 3rd and H is one. Those are both parking lots. And then at 1808 6th Street, and then as well as the properties that were transferred with the private property owner. And I'll show you the locations of these properties that staff is recommending to be exempt. This is the 6th and L parking lot that is adjacent to City Hall here, just to the east of City Hall. This is the 5th and D property, both of which these were on the original housing element, as well as the Broadway and McCullens property shown here. These would be new ones that will be added to the housing element, 3rd and G and 3rd and H parking lots. And then this is the 1808 6th Street. The way that this property came about is this originally was going to be intended for housing. It was supposed to be a part of the distribution and development agreement with Danco for the 7th and Myrtle properties. As they went through all of their renditions and design work and everything, they found out that they did not need this property. And so we'd be adding this to the housing element and looking to exempt it for development for housing. And then, of course, these are the 4 properties that were a part of the transfer of properties with the private developer, the Pearson properties. As far as the next steps, we've had HCD review this resolution. They provided some input, and that's been incorporated into the resolution that's before you tonight. We're meeting with the HCD, Housing and Community Development, next week. We are currently updating our H34, which is the list of properties and the number of units that are eligible for the number of units that we can develop out of those properties. After that is updated, we have to have a 30-day public review of those properties, and then during that time we'll include a presentation to council to give an update. After that, the updated housing element will go to HCD, and then after that it'll go to the Planning Commission for adoption, and then back to you guys for adoption after that. So that's all I have for my presentation. I'm available for any questions if council should have any.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Castellano.
Thanks. I was just kind of curious. So, you know, I understand the process. What if for some reason housing wasn't able to be built on one of the properties? We'd exempted it, and then something came up. What would be the process at that point? Like, is it forever exempt? Would we reincorporate it back into?
Yeah, it would not be forever. I mean, it technically would be forever exempt as long as you complied with that government code section. If you didn't comply with that government code section, you would have to go through the surplus land process, which includes a 60-day notification to people that it's available, and then another 30-day review, I believe, of HCD to look at the property. But if it was still going to be developed in compliance with that government code section where 80% of the land area is housing and 40% of the units are affordable, and there's some other guidelines that has to be for 30 years and half of the affordable units need to be very low income. But anyway, as long as it's in compliance with that government code section, yes, it would still be exempt. But if council elected to go in another direction, then we'd have to follow the surplus land legislation.
All right, Councilmember Bauer.
And that was the same question I had that Councilmember Castellano asked, but I guess the follow-up would be, just because it's exempt, it can sit there as an exempt property for eternity, right? I mean, nothing precludes it from being an empty lot or a parking lot, right? I mean, I think that you pretty much answered that, but just.
Well, that's true. That's true. And not only that, we've had discussions with housing and community development about, so let's say we go through this process, and let's say there's a private developer that comes up in the middle of this process and decides to build 104 or 100 affordable units that it's in the city of Eureka limits. Those can count towards our RENA. What that would do is potentially take away some of the properties that they're looking at for development. And that could count towards the 302 units that we need to meet by 2027. Staff would probably not recommend removing it from the housing element, potentially using that for future requirements related to our regional housing needs allocation and future housing elements. But yes, if it's exempt, it doesn't mean that I should put a caveat there. As long as we can meet the requirements of the housing element and get to our 304 units, yes, it could stay exempt for however long that period needs to be.
Thanks.
Sorry, Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you. What is the consequence of not being in compliance with the RENA requirements?
So we've received communications from HCD and even before when we were having the public meetings about what can happen if we're not in compliance. And I'm not familiar with any specific instances, but the state could come in and start legislating our zoning and making requirements of certain properties to be developed for affordable housing. They can take over control of our zoning regulations.
Of our zoning regulations, meaning they could take areas of town that aren't zoned for housing and change them into zoning for housing, or could they designate lots that we would need to work on developing?
They could, well, they're already doing that by this process here, designating these lots for development. If we did have a partnership where a property owner wanted to do this, we could have listed that in our housing element. What's difficult for that is we don't have anything other than eminent domain to ensure that those properties are developed for housing. So if somebody came to us and said, yeah, I'm going to use this property to develop 100 units and they don't come through with that, our only recourse would be to do some sort of eminent domain or something like that in order to get those housing units and meet our requirement.
Okay, that's thank you. That's all for now. Sorry.
Did I not answer this? If you need to rephrase it, I can try again.
No, I think I understand. I just wanted to know, like, you know, we know we have to build this many housing units, not just because we need them, but because we're required to by state law. And I was wondering, what's the stick on the other end of that law? And it sounds like if we don't do it, they're going to come in and do it for us.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the basic gist of it. And I'm sure there could be fines. I've tried to avoid those conversations, but we definitely, the delay of this process has gotten us some correspondence from HCD urging us to get with the program because we are past that last RFP date. We are one RFP behind in an RFP process that was supposed to happen in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And we're behind in that process. And that's why exempting these properties, we were always concerned about putting too much development out there over a certain period. That's why we spread it out over this time. And so, you know, now that we're kind of behind, we have concerns about, okay, we need to do this many units in this period of time. Is there going to be the workforce and wherewithal to make that many units in that short period of time?
All right, Councilmember Arroyo.
Oh, you know what? City Attorney Black has a comment, I believe.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Didn't see down there.
That's okay. This is just to supplement what the city manager was saying. I think the possibility exists in a, you know, probably wouldn't be a remedy of first resort, but it would be in line to happen to the city of Eureka if we're not in compliance, that potentially state funding, including grant funding, could be embargoed to the city.
Thank
yes,
you.
And they do control CDBG funding, home key funding, a lot of the critical funding that we use for our housing assistance, as well as for first-time home buyer programs, other programs that we do from HCD.
All right, Councilmember Arroyo.
Thank you for the presentation. And I just wanted to check in about, I know we're not really talking about in this process and declaring lands as surplus potentially. We're not really talking about the merits of any specific project. But I did want to note that, or ask you to elaborate a bit on, so when we talk about our RHNA numbers, our regional housing needs assessment numbers, we are not exclusively talking about low income housing. And in fact, I think from what I recall of the numbers, we needed to create quite a lot of market rate and above market rate housing. And so I know that, folks are here tonight likely to talk about some new properties that have been added, given that some of the properties were not feasible to move forward with. So could you speak to, of those, like, what would we be seeing a mix of types of units? What might we be looking at moving forward?
So ideally, like in the first RFP that we put out, mixed housing was preferred, whether that's very low income, market rate, above market rate is what's preferred. I don't want to get too much into the one on Wednesday, but I mean, it's very difficult to do that. But in the RFP process, that was something that was approved in the housing element, and that we're seeking to do is have a mixed use type. And yes, there is a requirement for all types of housing. However, we weren't required to meet that 304 number unit for affordable housing is something that's a little bit different than that. And Principal Planner Getz could probably speak a little bit more to the market rate and requirements that, we counted ADUs. I think this SB9 is, we are a little bit behind on ADUs, and this SB9 will help with getting to those numbers. But Principal Planner Getz, can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So our regional housing needs allocation number is 952 units, and that's comprised of various income levels from extremely low to above moderate. So it would be a combination of different income levels.
Right. Any other questions?
Did you repeat that number? 900 and what?
952.
Thank you.
And not 53 or 54, it's 52. Not just joking. The more the merrier.
All right. Any other questions? If not, I will open this up for public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Councilmember Moulton.
Sorry, I had another question before we move on.
Okay, we haven't started the public one yet, so go ahead.
Good. Got my hand up just in time. I know we're not talking about we're talking about 10 things and not this the specific lots, which I think is going to come up a lot in public comment here. If we move forward with declaring all of these property or exempting all of these properties from the surplus regulations, and then on Wednesday, when we start talking about the multimodal transportation center, is there a possibility that we could move forward now with this and then later decide that, I'm sorry, never mind. I'm gonna articulate my question better and bring it back in discussion.
All right, so now I'm going to open it back up to public comment. If you can use the reactions button to raise your hand, that's the preferred method. If not, you could turn on your camera and wave your hand. Greg Pearson.
Wow, I'm the first one.
Yes, you are. Quick on the
Yeah, hi, Greg Pearson. And as you know, I've been concerned about the utilization of the downtown parking lots. I think they're necessary for the businesses that have invested in that area. So I want to be consistent with that. I'm specifically concerned with the 3rd and G and 3rd and H parcels. It's my understanding those aren't going to be substantially for housing, but perhaps more of a transportation thing. So I'm wondering if it meets the requirement for this process. And I was thinking, has a parking study been conducted that takes into account all of these parking lots being removed from parking and turned into housing? because it seems like that as a council member, I'd want to know the impacts of those decisions that I'm making. But I can think of a really quick, practical and affordable way to do it. And that's get some construction fencing and fence all those parking lots up for 30 days and blockade some of the street parking for all of the required parking that the new developments would be creating. And then for 30 days, we get a sense of what this really means. And it doesn't really cost very much money. And everybody gets to participate in the experiment. And it's real stuff. It's not some theoretical piece of paper. Anyway, I just think that it's important that, you know, these are long lasting decisions and they have big impacts. And if we haven't done the homework behind it, I think we do our community a disservice. So I throw that out there as a suggestion. It's pretty inexpensive and I think very practical to make sure we get some real insights into the impacts of these decisions. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did say thank you. Bill McCauley. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Bill McCauley. I'm a Eureka resident and downtown business owner. Our accounting firm is backs up onto the 3rd and G portion of these 2 lots that have now shown up on this list. And those are critical. And so I really wanted to point out that to remove 78 parking spaces is really going to create major problems for not only our business, but for the Old Town businesses that rely on not only local visitors, but our local customers, but visitors from out of the area. Their biggest complaint and challenge down there from their customers is parking and maybe restrooms. And so I think we really need to think carefully about whether or not we want to enter into this. This parking lot is available for all day parking. Where are people going to park? I think what's going to happen, you're going to lose 78 spaces. You're going to create additional demand for parking. You have a transportation transit facility that includes ride sharing, bus riding. Some people are going to need to go and park a car and be able to get in and access those. You're going to have 30 plus residential units, and the landlords I speak to tell me that you can expect 1.5 to 2.5 vehicles per unit. None of this has been from my view, has been considered. Going on that, the city is in the middle of a parking study. I understand public comment's going to be received on it next week, and it feels like the cart is far in front of the horse here in terms of considering whether or not this is an appropriate location. And so I really think that we need to do better here. This lot is critical. It is unique, and it provides. I'm there all the time. I can see, when the brewery's going, that thing is full in the evenings, and when it's not COVID, it's parked up most of the day. And things are different right now. But then again, HTA's got 25% ridership on their buses. So if we're comparing apples and oranges anyway, there's lots of effects here we need to take into account. I strongly encourage you to table those 2 parcels until there has been an opportunity for public comment to discuss the merits of this development and to have a full consideration of the impacts on the Old Town and downtown businesses. So I strongly encourage you to withdraw those from this consideration this evening. Thank you.
I'm sorry again. Thank you. Sebastian?
Yeah, I was just curious about with that SB 9 and the housing numbers that are required, what kind of sugar or incentive would the city, through that planning process, would they be able to incorporate that to help alleviate some of these surplus properties and get that housing element taken care of through some of those extra units that can be done on those subdivided properties and those kind of things. If there's 3,000 or so units that are eligible, or 3,000 parcels that are eligible or so, it sounds like a lot of that might be alleviated by really sweetening that part of the pie. That's all I had to say about that. And as a downtown, Old Town business, all the commentary about, you know, the traffic coming through town, needing a place to stop, would be nice if the parking was there for them. So when it's not there for them, or even like I said previously in the earlier commentary, just in general parking for the folks that are there during the day for their day jobs and those kind of things. It just sounds like it's going to be a lot more congestion in Old Town that would lead to a lot less people stopping in to partake in any of my essential oysters and libations. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenny Carswell.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Security National. We're currently located at 5th and E Streets in Eureka. This 5th and D Street lot, as well as other downtown lots in the business district in Old Town, this is vital parking for our businesses. We have some tenants that are retail based that already are having issues with parking servicing their businesses as is. So just an influx of more cars potentially could really put a bottleneck on their business. Our company alone has 175 employees. We struggle for parking every day. We go out and play the musical car game every 2 hours just to keep from getting parking tickets, which is a problem. I actually got one this Monday myself, just at work. So I just strongly consider council to consider these issues for the employees of the downtown business district area. We're already limited as it is. There's a lot of stuff being said that we have plenty of parking. I firsthand can tell you that we have a problem right now. So this is something that'll impact us. I just recommend some more consideration on the topic moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria del Carmen Barone.
Oh, thank you. I first want to express gratitude for all that you folks do. It's never ending. It's tremendous. My question is pretty direct. I do appreciate what Greg Pearson offered as far as a parking lot study. He offered the idea of a 30-day trial, fence in those parking lots, see what happens. Is there a plan to do a parking study before this goes any further? Because clearly it's a huge issue.
We can possibly answer that when we get back to discussion part, but we don't answer questions during public comment.
Okay. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Philip Holland.
Good evening. My name is Phil Holland, and I'm a Eureka resident, business owner, co-owner in a property that's immediately adjacent to the 3rd and G and H Street lot that's being considered as being classified as surplus tonight. I just want to be on the record to say that if the parking lots aren't surplus. I sent an email to the different council members, but the general public probably isn't aware of the lack of notices to the surrounding businesses. Last council meeting, there was a vague reference to the development of those parking lots, at which point I approached Council Member Burgell about it, and she referred me back to November 16th council meeting, where you passed a memorandum of understanding with HDA that didn't even really talk about housing until you dug down even into it further. I don't think that the surrounding businesses were made aware of it before then. Last Wednesday, there was an announcement at the Eureka Main Street meeting, and maybe you can ask your city manager how that went. I think there was really disappointment. In fact, Eureka Main Street came out with a letter opposing any development on that property. So I'd also like to ask for some additional time to think about that when you approached people about the 4th and G Street property and parking lots and so forth. The community was made aware of it, and they came up with some alternatives that gave you some more housing. And maybe that's something that you could delay putting this as the surplus property tonight. We got official notice in today's mail. That's my first official notice that something's happening in that parking lot immediately adjacent to us. And I'm really disappointed that we found out about through hearsay and so forth about that. So I would ask that you please exclude those 2 parcels from your surplus property resolution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Gare.
Thank you. My name is Greg Gare. I'm the Executive Director for Northern California Indian Development Council, the Managing Partner for the Carson Block building property on the corner of 3rd and F in Old Town. We operate a great deal of nonprofit intertribal operations out of the building and are also leased to both retail and service people inside the building. And the city's been a great partner for us. The city is responsible as a partner for us being able to do that development. And I want to acknowledge the city for all of the years they put in helping the Carson Block become the jewel that it is today. But I think that the proposal today for the parking lots that are central to Old Town and downtown do indeed, echoing the sentiments of other people that have been here, deserve a greater amount of study. I think Greg's idea is fascinating. Pearson's idea is fascinating. Put a fence around it for 30 days. Boy, the feedback will be direct. I also sit on the Eureka Main Street board. There was a letter that was drafted. I was on the subcommittee that helped draft the letter, and I believe that was turned into the city yesterday. I don't see it in the agenda or as any of the agenda attachment items. I'd like to make sure that I know you can't give me feedback, but I would read it out loud during my time now if you have not received that letter. The Eureka Main Street board was unanimous in its opposition to including those 3rd and G and 3rd and H parcels into the proposal that's before you. They are in favor of low income and mixed use housing. They're in favor of transport. We just think that the idea that those lots are the best or only solution to the other properties that are lost is a great detriment to everything that you have worked with us on in building in Old Town and downtown, and will have a devastating effect on the economy of business, service businesses, retail businesses, residents, and the general public in using the Old Town and downtown area that we've worked so hard to restore. There has to be a more creative solution than bending to the pressure that the state is putting on us by taking property, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, if you will. If the letter has not gotten to the council, I would ask for permission to come back and read it out to you. And I will cut the rest of my time in case I get the opportunity to do that.
It has been received. I'll just let you know that.
Thank you very much.
I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, wait. Deborah Dukes. Did you go away?
I apologize. Just a minute.
Okay.
I tried not to interfere on other people anyway. I wanted to commend the city for working on infill and working on getting intermodal transportation in the center of the city where it will be most useful to everybody, as we are the commercial and political center of Humboldt County, the county seat. When an intermodal transportation facility along with housing is plopped right in the middle of the business district, those are customers, those are clients who are going to be walking or biking to Old Town and downtown. I hate to say anything against a previous public comment, but I walk to Old Town and downtown all the time, including for my grocery shopping. I don't drive down there. And as I walk along, I see many open parking spaces. There's also that huge lot down at the foot of C Street. If somebody has to walk a couple of blocks, it might be good for them. So I fully support infill in the city of Eureka, and I encourage you to make better use of prime property like the G&H at 3rd parking lots for this infill. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer. Do you know you're on mute?
Oh, now
There
can you
you
hear
go.
me?
Now you're
Okay.
better. Yeah.
Sorry, not a big zoomer. I am a business owner in Eureka. I commute from McKinleyville daily. I don't think taking up parking or taking away parking from the Old Town area is a good idea. I left at 9:45 last night. I often get there early in the morning, and I don't want to walk 10 blocks. There were people partying on the back corner of our building that, thank goodness, I drove by and didn't have to walk by. I think you guys need to really pay attention to what that is used for and how many people that work down there that also need parking to be there. That's it.
Thank you. Sean Grundman or Shan?
Hi, I'm Shan Grenman, and I also am a co-owner in a business that is close to the 3rd and G and 3rd and H parking lots. I don't work in Eureka very often. Parking is always a nightmare in Eureka. When we go to downtown to eat, to visit all the downtown events, to go to the shops, we park in those parking spots and we walk to downtown. If it was not for that parking spot, we wouldn't bother. Parking is a nightmare. If you push all of the other parking out on the street, there won't be a spot for people to stop and park. And whereas you might have a few people, like the lady that spoke before that was willing to walk from her house, I can't walk from Fortuna to get there. I go in there, we park, we frequent the businesses, we go through the shops. Without the parking, there is no way that's ever going to happen. I would never venture into that part of town unless I had to for my work. I think that you need to really consider the damage that it's going to do to businesses that are already suffering down there. Also, whereas I think that walking is great for people, not everybody can walk that far. And I don't think that we should be excluding them from the businesses, from the restaurants, or from their work because the parking is that far away. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any others? I don't see any other hands up. I think
Mayor, we do have, let's see, it looks like we do have
Kelly.
Mr. Martin, Kelly Martin.
Oh, okay.
And John Fullerton as well.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go with Kelly Martin, then John Fullerton.
Thank you, Council. I didn't know if you knew this or not, but they used to assess the businesses in Old Town for years to buy those parking lots that they have in Old Town. And then the assessment started years ago. I'm not sure what year it was when they started, but they ceased in around 80, 85 is what I hear, is when they stopped charging the assessment to purchase the parking lots for the city of Old Town, to make Old Town more vibrant. And so that's a concern that I have, that we're now that the people have been forging out of business down there and been employing their employees, and now they're taking the parking away from them. I have a business down there myself, and I noticed that parking lot is the busiest one in Old Town. The one behind the brewery is. I've been on the parking meetings down there with Main Street over the years, and a bunch of different committees that we've been on. And that parking lot is the main parking lot for Old Town. When people fill that up and they go to the restaurant, which is also one of the busiest restaurants in Eureka for a sit-down restaurant, they come into Old Town as soon as they get done eating and purchase things from the storefronts. Another thing that hasn't been discussed is the jail is getting ready to break ground over there on their property, and that's going to put a bunch of additional parking down on 3rd Street, which I already have in front of my place at 3rd from the the employees at the county. I had a discussion with 39 blocks of property owners in the last 2 days. Repeat that, that's 39 Old Town blocks of property owners and businesses. And I can bring this into Pam or Miles tomorrow, and I can show you this. That's 39 different blocks, city blocks of Old Town that are very concerned about this project. We think that we could come up with something that would be, I've looked at some properties the last few days at housing problems. We think we can come up with something that's better than taking this main hub for these merchants and storekeepers that have been slaving it out down there for 20 years. Some of them have been there for 40 years. I haven't had anybody that's been for the project that I've contacted. I still have to contact a lot of people, but that's a pretty good chunk of property of all those storefronts that oppose this particular project. And some of the people, the restaurants I talked to, all the ones I talked to opposed it. They just got notice today that this Zoom meeting was going on, and I just don't think that's very good for the Old Town and the merchants and the businesses down there. And it's a very rare area, and people come from all over here, and you see different.
I'm sorry, it's been 3 minutes, Mr. Martin.
Okay, Pam, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Fullerton. Did John Fullerton want to speak?
You're muted, John.
John, you're muted, John. We didn't hear you from the beginning at all.
Okay, now you can hear me. I'd like to add my voice to those that are opposed to using the public parking lots in the Old Town, downtown area. The local businesses need these parking lots for our customers and our clients. My office is across the street from the 3rd and G and 3rd and H lot, and losing that parking would be devastating to the local area, because I went out on my front door of my office and I counted the cars out there Monday around 4 o'clock, and there was almost 40 cars in that lot, and that's with the restaurant being closed during the day. When it reopens, that lot is often close to being full. What you're going to do is displace those 40 to 70 parked cars, and they're going to be parking out on the street. And that's going to have a big impact on my clients, many of them who are older and can't walk 2 blocks to come to my office. So the city of Eureka depends on the sales tax revenue created by the businesses, but the businesses depend on you to provide parking for our customers. So I think Greg Pearson had a really tremendous idea of fencing all these lots off for 30 days so that you can get an idea of exactly how bad this will impact our downtown, Old Town areas. So please rethink this, save the parking lots in the business district. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else? Do you see anybody on another page?
Cindy Olson, you are unmuted.
Are you saying something, Pam?
Cindy Olson is unmuted. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm speaking tonight as a downtown property owner who supports low-income housing for everyone. However, as a business owner, I am against the taking of our business parking lots. Our business districts have suffered greatly over the past 2 years just to keep their doors open because of the pandemic. On top of that, the homeless addicts have terrorized the business districts and their customers. They have done extensive damage to businesses in theft and vandalism. and now you want to put the final nail in the coffin of the business community by taking away their parking. I have yet to receive any letter regarding your proposed actions on these lots, and I am within the perimeter of 2 of these properties. The people I have spoken to have never received any letters of your proposal. Many people have no clue to what you're planning to do. They have not been given proper notice of the proposed actions and have not been given an opportunity to address the council. The City Council proposes dramatic changes to the use of city properties, and the council should be aware of their dramatic effect upon property owners and businesses in the neighborhood. The City Council should be responsive to the needs of the neighborhood businesses. The City Council postponed the Pearson property swap in order that the community would have a chance after Christmas to comment on this trade. The City Council should postpone the surplus property decision for 30 days to allow community input for such an important event. The community is in support of housing for everyone and want a chance to help the process proceed, but also want to keep our parking in order for our business districts to survive. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other folks who have unmuted. If you would like to speak, please unmute now and we can call on you.
All right.
All right.
Sounds like maybe we're ready to bring it back to council. Do we have any comments or a motion by council?
Mayor, can I request a break just to formulate some thoughts after all that public comment and come back in a few minutes?
Yeah, actually we can do that. It is 7:42. Let's get back in 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
On the far other page. Okay, everybody is here, rested and potentially, hopefully have some thoughts sorted. So let's discuss the item at hand now. Does anybody have any comments or want to be bold? Just make a motion. Councilmember Moulton.
I have a question. I figured out how to articulate the question I didn't ask earlier. Can I do that?
Yes.
With the intermodal transit idea, is there a time limit or a timeline or a deadline that we are up against? Because I know that there was lots of conversation and then there's multiple agencies involved. Would we have to act on this now? Or is it possible for us to wait on those specific lots?
So there's 2 issues. One is the grant deadline for the HTA grant that's being submitted, I believe is February 16th. And the competitiveness of that grant is contingent upon this development in the MOU the council adopted. The same issues that we have with the state as far as us being behind and where we're at in the process with complying with our updated housing element. We need to move on that. I don't know what's going to trigger the state to take any sort of action against us. Don't want to find out either, but the main thing is that HTA has a grant proposal that's due, and it's contingent on that.
And the ongoing, sorry, just to follow up, the ongoing parking survey that's part of the waterfront specific plan, do we know when that data will be available?
So right now, I received information. Let me bring that up. The data has been collected from the stakeholders, and that was conducted in November. The survey is complete. The policy paper is currently under review, and the next is to take the data and policies to the Transportation and Safety Commission and Council in the spring. We're also gathering information from we hear a lot of comments from the community members about how parking settings aren't relevant during COVID. We have parking studies that are pre-COVID, and we're relying on information from those parking studies. And if it's related to the 3rd G and 3rd H, we'll present that information on Wednesday.
And then just one more. If we were to exempt those 2 specific lots from this action, okay, could we apply for the grant anyway and then catch up with ourselves later on?
They're not comfortable doing that. The conversations that we've had with HTA and Servitas is that they don't want to put this forward without knowing that this is the development that's going on. So when you say exempt, you mean remove those 2
I mean, remove them from this action. Yeah. Okay, that's all my questions for the moment.
I can't speak for them, but they definitely made it clear that they wanted this decision prior to the submittal of the grant application.
It certainly make the application weaker.
Because it may not exist if we. So the problem is, if the intermodal transit center was in and of itself and there was no housing, this property would not qualify for the exemption. And at that point in time, we'd have to go through the surplus land legislation, and somebody could easily come in and say, hey, I want to do something else. And as long as it complies with, what the state wants to see for housing, then they could go through that. So if we took out the housing and we just did the transit center, it wouldn't be eligible for this exemption.
Okay, that's all for the moment. Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. Let's see. Pardon me. One question. Could you talk about opportunities for public engagement with this process that will be forthcoming? And, I know there have been opportunities in the past, when we created the housing element that came after a parking study and some significant public engagement. But I just know that public engagement is important and needs to be ongoing. So can you talk about what that might look like in the upcoming months?
Yeah, so the waterfront specific study, the council approved the consultant Dudek that currently is under contract with us right now, and they're preparing for a March 10th public meeting for discussions with stakeholders and the public. And that'll be the first of a few public meetings, and that'll be the start of that public process to discuss infill development and parking as well.
Thank you. And then in terms of comments, I'll just say that, going forward tonight, at this point, though I do, just to be clear and transparent, I do support the transit center concept. This does not cement us in any sort of guaranteed moving forward, after this. Right now we're really just talking about exempting these properties, not an actual development. I have personally owned a business within one block of the G&H lot, worked at a business within a block of the G&H lot, and I currently work at a business across the street. So, I definitely understand that people, who live, work, own businesses in Old Town, I understand the context and what it's like. For me, I do think that as a community and as a society, we need to be willing to engage with change in order to address our global the global climate crisis, and that really begins with the fact that all of us have to make changes in our lives. I do think we'll need to do something for people who, you know, work all day in Old Town. You know, I definitely sympathize with the running around, trying to kind of battle the 2-hour parking thing, you know, and those kinds of things can and will change as we move forward. Though I think it will potentially create some adjustments and perhaps even discomfort in kind of changing our habits. I do think that this will also bring economic opportunity with workforce housing, potentially a child care center. Again, I'm hesitant to speak too much to the project itself because it's not really what's on the agenda, but you know, we'll also be collaborating with growing industries and creating different ways of orienting in the world of work, which really it's, you know, if Eureka does not look towards the future, we will get left behind, you know, and those industries will find other places to go. And I want Eureka to be a place where people know that they can live and work and, you know, participate in the development of these new economies. And so, you know, for sure, I want to continue to engage with the public in moving this forward and making sure that we are addressing needs. And I think, you know, not to say I know the answers at this point, but I do think things like, you know, an electric shuttle or, you know, could be a possibility in the future. Again, that, you know, we have time. Any sort of development will take time to actually be implemented. And so, you know, we have time to continue to meet and work together on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer.
Councilmember Castellano keeps channeling my thoughts. No, you know, that's kind of, I appreciate all the concern. I mean, that's, of course, business owners, you'd be concerned about parking. But, you know, I also think that we tend to think about decision-making in the contemporary fashion. You know, we think about the present. We have parking issues or we have the notion that there's parking issues, but the future is going to be something different, and it's okay, right? That hopefully, you know, we're not all driving to Old Town. We can't, because the climate can't afford it. So what are we going to do? You know, I heard a great quote, Code Red for Humanity talk recently, and it's probably something we should think about every time we make a decision. Is infrastructure is climate policy. Infrastructure is climate policy. Everything we do when it comes to infrastructure, I mean, transportation, housing, has to be thought of in how do we get people to not burn fuel, right? To get around, to have a great life without the reliance on personal vehicles. You know, we all own them, but we have to start thinking that way. And that's the dilemma that, and it's hard for us not to all think about the present because that's what we're living in, but we gotta be thinking about the future, you know? And I've got lots of things to say, but I just had an experience, you know, Monterey Bay, you know, a place that so many people go to because it's a cool spot. The parking is crazy, but people want to be there. And so you deal with it. And I'm not saying we should have to deal with crazy parking, but if we want Old Town to be a destination, and we all do, for our businesses, for our community, we want more people, and we'll never have enough parking. So, you know, we have to think of, again, alternative infrastructure, alternative ways of getting around. Hopefully, if this were to lead to this decision were to lead to an intermodal facility, right? People are coming to Old Town on buses, rideshare, whatever. So they're not taking their personal vehicle. you know, and they'll be going to those businesses. So it's a different way of thinking about Old Town. And I just hope, you know, people have an open mind to that, you know, change is okay and it has to happen. But what we're deciding right now we're not deciding anything other than we could designate some property as surplus. It does not change the designation that it currently is, but we're keeping an open mind to what it could be. So I'll leave it at that and let others speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Arroyo. Oh, I'm sorry, your hand blended in with your ceiling.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the council's thoughts, and I also want to thank everyone who came to speak. It really is meaningful, and I really appreciate the participation and democracy. And people always ask, for some reason, people always ask if being on the council is fun, and I almost never would describe it as fun. There are fun moments, but a lot of moments are like this, where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have a state mandate on one side and limited city resources. So, you know, and on the other hand, you have people expressing really clearly and vocally how much they want to preserve something that is currently in place. And that is not easy. When I say we have limited resources, you know, we don't have the public funds to buy the very few large undeveloped parcels that are remaining in Eureka. And I think our city manager has very clearly expressed willingness to look at available alternatives, but we don't have millions of dollars to buy large properties that are currently developable in Eureka. We have our property. So we have the property that the city owns right now to work with. And we are being told in no unclear terms by the state that we need to create more housing. So the option of just not creating more housing and not doing infill in this dense way is not available to us. I think many folks would like to see us cap growth, but that is not the state that we live in. And it's not the community that we live in. And we have a number of ways in which our community is growing and needs more housing, including the expansion of Cal Poly Humboldt. And I think within that, there are opportunities. I realize that the proposed agenda item tonight is upsetting and frustrating for people. And I think other council members have done a good job of speaking to some of the opportunities, but I really want to emphasize the benefits of new residents in our Old Town area, Old Town and downtown area, on businesses, and the trade-off that will come from hundreds of new residents living there full time, many of whom have ample incomes, and the impacts on community safety. I don't think anyone's brought this up yet, but the you know, the impact of I lived for a few years, maybe not many years, but a few years in Old Town, and spend a lot of my time there. Essentially, you know, I always felt safer being there at night when there were a lot of people walking around, or there were eyes and ears on the street. And that's a commonly accepted principle of crime prevention through environmental design, is to encourage more use of spaces and more presence at all hours of day or night. So by having more residents in Old Town, I do believe we will see that, and more residents who are there engaging in everyday activities rather than you know, perhaps illicit activities. So, you know, that is something that I really want to emphasize. That is, to me, an important long-term planning aspect of this decision, rather than, you know, looking at potentially the short-term loss of some parking, which I do recognize is valuable. I am the Eureka representative to the Humboldt Transit Authority, and I am the board chair. So if you have specific concerns and frustrations around Humboldt Transit Authority's role in this, I would say, please reach out to me. I'm willing to talk about it. Again, transit is something that we are also under expectation to grow, and to transit is expected to change, and we are being mandated to make a lot of changes and improvements with transit as well in our region to meet state objectives. And a lot of those I wholeheartedly support, but we are also being pressed to improve transit and to improve use of transit. And a big way of doing that is this transit center. So when we talk about the specific parcel and the grant that HTA applied for, you know, I want folks to know that I was involved in that, and the HTA board has been, you know, talking about it, and we welcome you to speak to HTA at our next meeting as well. Leslie touched on the surplusing of land, you know, not necessarily being a guarantee of a specific development approach, so I won't go into my notes about that. I will say that, you know, I hear some concerns about us not having brought up this specific parcel previously. And I will say that when we did our general plan, we looked at areas throughout the city and how people wanted to see development in those communities. And in Old Town, people overwhelmingly wanted to see multi-use buildings close to the edge of the sidewalk and not large parking lots. And whereas other parts of town were more strip mall-like, people really wanted to see that form of development in our Old Town and downtown. So wherever we can prioritize that, I think it absolutely fits with the ample public input we heard from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in this process of creating our planning document that guides our development. So I think that's really important to mention. I was looking at, you know, in preparation for this meeting, I was looking at a lot of the parking, and we are doing a parking study, but I was looking at a lot of the parking strategies for cities that I see as somewhat aspirational for us, or that I find charming. And looking at like Astoria, Oregon, for example, where there's on-street parking that is very short in time frame, close to businesses, so that people have to, so that parking has to turn over. But there's longer term parking that's available several blocks away. And so that's the kind of strategy that Astoria is using to ensure that people can still get to businesses for appointments or go shopping, or have a meal and then get on with their day. Whereas folks who are going to be there longer will be parked further away. The same is true for, in some ways, the city of Ukiah has exclusively, actually they have a couple of parking lots, but they're quite small, so it's exclusively on-street parking. Mount Shasta, exclusively on-street parking, sometimes during the middle of the summer, extremely busy downtown, but folks have to walk a couple blocks to from on-street parking to their destination. Definitely downtown Eugene, definitely a larger city than ours, but you know, there are some strategies around concentrated parking that's further away from destinations, and then metered parking on the streets, but an ample amount of on-street parking. So I think we're going to be looking at significant changes in parking behavior over time, but what we can't necessarily afford as a city is to forego the limited opportunities we have to develop housing and multi-use buildings in places where they are appropriate, consistent with our general plan, and they're the limited options available to us. I think that's all I really need to say at this time. I just wanted to really drive home that point about our general plan and zoning code development process and the significant public outreach we did pre-COVID about what people wanted to see in Old Town, and that has really been a part of guiding this, you know, this direction. And, you know, and really think about what the positives could be of having new residents located in Old Town who are able to, you know, we're not talking about, for these particular developments, I know we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of what's being proposed, but we are not talking about a very low income development by and large. We're talking about folks with means being able to live and shop and buy things and get goods and services in Old Town. And that has a lot of benefits. So I did want to ask staff to speak to ADA parking, whether there will be additional spaces designated on the street in recognition of the fact that some people noted that there were folks who were perhaps needing those services. So could you speak to how that will be handled?
So the majority of the site is taking into consideration the flyer that I believe council received talks about a lot of those pedestrian walkways and also ADA amenities that are there. Parking itself, we would, as a part of the development, need to look at that. I currently, right now, there's nothing specifically set aside, but obviously we're going to need to comply with whatever our parking requirements are and building code requirements are for the building. So it's not gone far enough around to specifically say where and what, but I do know that there was, with the group that was working on the design of this building, there was participation from folks that were advocates for ADA.
So I do want to say public comment time for this is over, but Miles, do you want to remind everybody when the meeting's going to be to discuss the next part of this, which I think people can then make public comments at that time.
So the development that most people are talking about behind Bosco's Brewery and parking lots between 3rd and the alley and G and H Street. Resolution will be going to council for that development on Wednesday, February the 9th at 6 p.m. It will be a hybrid meeting where people could either come in person or come via Zoom. And the notifications went out yesterday in a 900-foot radius from this site. And so every property owner within 900 feet were sent a postcard. And then also the flyer that I was speaking of previously was handed out to the doors within 300 feet of the site. And so that information for that is on there. And then the agenda for that will be posted by tomorrow with an agenda summary and the resolution that's up for council's consideration.
Thank you. And if anybody has questions before that, they can reach out to any one of us and we could try to respond to your questions or comments. We don't have a motion on the table yet. The one thing I would like to add is we've talked a whole lot about the RHNA numbers that are required by the state for us to meet, but I'm in discussions literally several times a week with local industries, especially hospitals, HSU, bigger employers that are just desperate for workforce housing. So whether this is required by the state or not, our RHNA numbers are actually probably low compared to what we're looking at now with Cal Poly and incoming industries. So it is true that we do have a state mandate, but we also have a mandate to meet the needs of our own community's workforce. So housing is not just something people are telling us to do from the outside. Housing is something people are telling us to do every day from within the county. And I just wanted to emphasize that point as well. Councilmember Castellano, then Councilmember Moulton.
Well, I was going to make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka City Council finding that the properties identified as APN 008-052-024, 008-052-025, 008-052-026, 008-052-027, 002-114, 001-136, 001-001-136, 002, 001-103, 003, 001-192, 004, and 008-112-031 are exempt surplus lands pursuant to Government Code Section 37364.
Can I have a second, and then we'll do discussion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Bauer. Councilmember Moulton, then Councilmember Arroyo. Looked like you had something to say.
Just wanted to thank Councilmember Arroyo for the perspective and for the future looking from Councilmember Bauer. I think this is the thing that I have been struggling with for the past few days when I've been talking to people just talking to constituents and folks and the people who have expressed concerns with businesses in Old Town, and also people who want to see Eureka as a forward-looking city. And it seems like what I'm hearing is that this is what people want for Eureka in the future, is this kind of thing, but they don't want to eat their vegetables in the present. And that I do want to see additional solutions for getting people with cars in and out of Old Town, but I'm just very much in favor of having a multimodal transportation center there. I think having more people and more customers in town is going to ultimately be good for businesses, and having solutions, even if we have to force ourselves to come up with them around responsible transportation, is what Eureka needs to do moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Arroyo.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate how appreciative I am of people speaking up tonight, and it is pretty hard to proceed with something that a lot of people are telling you they're really disappointed with. But I think given the entirety of the picture, it is the right move. And I've heard a lot of people reach out to acknowledge that we do need more housing, but they would prefer that it not be there. And to that, I would say, if there are alternatives, please reach out to us. Otherwise, these are the parcels we have. And I just want to emphasize, it was in City Manager Slattery's presentation, but many of the other parcels that we had considered were also in Old Town and were also public parking. There's been a shift in which of those we're proceeding with, anyway, we are changing things up and trying to disperse the housing that we're developing that's dense throughout the city. And that's been an objective that I had, and that I think our council has shown that we have. But I recognize there is some impact that's significant in this location. So thank you for your comments on that. And I'm always bummed at the description that somehow the city council could be anti-local business, because we recognize that you're the lifeblood of our city, and we do support local businesses. We just have to meet these other objectives too. So please don't think that it means that we don't care about local business, because we do have objectives that we have to uphold that are different from the short-term objectives that businesses would like to see us go through with. So, these weigh kind of heavy on my heart, these kinds of decisions, but I think it is the right direction, and I'm personally ready to vote.
All right. I think everybody has discussed this. We have a motion and a second. So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. I know that was a hard one for council and probably for some of the people in the audience. So thank you for participating and continue to participate. Item H2, Bill number 1011, presentation of claims for certain causes of action against the city. And this will be our city attorney, Bob Rock.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you're all familiar to a degree with the claim process that requires people who have claims for money or damages against the city to give notice to the city that they intend to file a lawsuit. And the way that reads in the government code essentially establishes that as a general rule, but then carves out, I think it's 12 or 13 exceptions to that claim requirement. This ordinance, this bill, would as introduced would eliminate those exceptions and to bring the other causes of action against the city under the claim statute through city ordinance. And that is specifically authorized by the government code. There are advantages to the city to require claims, including early notice, the ability to identify city employees who are alleged to be involved with a damage, and to identify other witnesses and give the city the opportunity to reach early settlement. So this bill is recommended, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you have.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for City Attorney Black? It looks like everybody is comfortable with that. Does anybody in the audience have anything to say about this item particularly? I don't see any hands. Anybody want to unmute if they have anything? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to council for a motion or comments. Councilmember Bauer.
I'll do the honors making the motion. Waive full reading and read by title only and introduce bill number 1011-CS, a bill adding section 39.11 to chapter 39 of the Eureka Municipal Code, requiring presentation of claims for money or damages under the Government Claims Act for claims otherwise accepted from the claim requirement by Government Code section 905.
All right, do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Castellano. Any further discussion on this item? All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell absent. Motion carries.
All right. For our next two items, we are going to ask Councilmember Castellano to step away because she's going to recuse herself. She has some involvement in these. So we are going to move on to item I1 under reports and action items, Eureka Art and Culture COVID Grant Program. And for that, we have Economic Development Manager Juan Asbury. Are you talking, Swan? Because I can't hear you. Okay, you're on mute.
How about now?
Now we can hear you, but we can't see your presentation anymore. You can't do them both at the same time.
I can. Hold on. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I am bringing before you a Eureka Art and Culture COVID grant. So tonight staff is asking for approval to use $130,000 of ARPA funds to provide grants of $7,500 to support eligible art and culture related entities located within the city that have been affected by COVID in order to support their continued operation. And before I go forward, I want to thank Calder Johnson and Jemima Har. They have formed a subcommittee. They both serve on our Economic Development Commission and our Art and Culture Commission, and they helped put this together. So let's talk about what types of entities will be eligible. We broke this down into two types with different requirements. The first group are live performance venue operators, performing arts organizations, art galleries, and motion picture theater operators. For this group of entities, here is the eligibility criteria. The business entity must, as a principal business activity, organize, promote, produce, manage, or host live concerts, comedy shows, theatrical productions, charge through ticketing or front door entrance fee must be applied. Performers must be paid in an amount based on percentage of sales, a guarantee in writing or standard contract, or another mutually beneficial formal agreement. And at least 70% of the entity's earned revenue is derived from cover charges or ticket sales, production fees or production reimbursements, nonprofit educational initiatives, or the sale of event beverages, food, or merchandise in conjunction with a live event. And then the second group of entities that are eligible are going to be nonprofit organizations and museums, meaning a building in which objects of historical, scientific, artistic, or cultural interest are stored and exhibited, or an organization that provides programming across one or more of the following artistic fields: creative placemaking, dance, design, folk and traditional arts, literary arts, multidisciplinary arts, music, media, arts, theater, and visual arts. And then churches and other religious institutions are not going to be eligible. So what are the eligibility requirements? Applicants must have had a 20% or more reduction in gross revenue resulting from COVID. Their physical commercial address must be in Eureka, and they must have a valid City of Eureka business license. The applicant must have been in business before March 1st, 2020, pre-pandemic. And entities with active code violations and home-based businesses are not eligible, and individuals that own or have interest in more than one business will be limited to one grant. And then the application is going to be on our website starting tomorrow morning. When applicants submit their application, they'll also need to supply their business financials, including their federal and state 2019 and 2020 tax returns, a statement of what the funds are going to be used for, and an IRS W-9 form. And then these grants are to go towards general operating expenses. The intent of this program is to help art and culture related entities to survive the pandemic, and we want to see those seats filled again. The deadline to apply is April 1st. So I made a list of entities that I think will be eligible. There's 13 of them. There could be more, or there could be some that don't meet those requirements. If there are leftover funds, the subcommittee of the Art and Culture Commission will meet again and provide suggestions on what kind of equipment should be purchased for producing outdoor events in city parks. And then these suggestions will then be taken to the Art and Culture Commission for approval. And of course, we partner with community services on that part. And I have some suggested motion language for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I love that super simple suggested motion after some of the crazy ones we've had today. Does anybody have any questions for Economic Development Manager Asbury? No questions? Oh yeah. Who am I missing?
Councilmember Moulton.
Yeah, where is she? Did she
Popping up to the top. Hello. Nope, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, you disappeared. I thought maybe you recused yourself and I didn't know. Perfect. So, any questions? Did you have any, Councilmember Moulton?
I did, and I did not recuse myself as I no longer operate a gallery or
no, you just disappeared on my screen, so I thought maybe you did.
Gotcha. The eligibility requirement that performers must be paid up based on a percentage of sales. Well, that sounds like lovely. Is that true for any venue in the city of Eureka?
That is an excellent point. And to be honest, I'm in uncharted territory. So if that is a ridiculous requirement, we can take that out.
In my experience, performer, it may be something that happens in music, but when it comes to theater and dance, performers are often volunteers or doing it for a set stipend. I don't know anybody besides big bands that are going to get paid a percentage of door. I think that's that might be unreasonable and eliminate a lot of businesses that are actually operating in Eureka. And then another question on that line, entities with more than one, sorry, back in eligibility requirements, entities with more than one business, only one business would be eligible to apply. As I would like to point out that the Dreammaker project of the Dreammaker program of Eureka is over 120, sorry. The Dreammaker program of the Ink People is over 120 different projects, and they all operate independently. Several of them are venues and performing arts spaces or troops that might be qualifying for this. I haven't looked at it. I don't work there. But they, because of the nature of small arts nonprofits, the Ink People has this program where everybody can get under one roof and operate under the same EIN number. So they're all in the same 501c3, even though they have their own books, they have their own fundraising, they have their own administration. And it would, I think it would be reasonable for not just, it wouldn't necessarily be reasonable for like a theater to have multiple troupes that perform there applying for this, but having some fire spinners and the dance school and the breakdancing company, you know, all be able to apply because they are in different places and they are not connected businesses, except that we have this wonderful thing called the Ink People that provides a back office and backbone for so many art and culture projects in our community. I would hate for that logistical advantage that they have pooled their resources to make all these wonderful little projects possible, to prevent them from getting funding because they are working together. That makes sense?
I wholeheartedly agree. And so that's why I changed the language to be that individuals that owner have interest in more than one. And I was hoping that would clarify it, that it'd be like if one person had multiple entities, they couldn't do it, not necessarily. We did have the Ink People in mind. They are an umbrella. Morris Graves is also an umbrella. North Coast Repertory Theater has also been an umbrella. So I am with you, and I don't know how to clarify that.
So then if the way that you do have it worded, if an individual was involved in multiple projects, would it be the business, the project that's applying and not the individual, or the individual's applying and therefore you need to make it that individual can't apply for multiple grants?
I think
say I own two separate venues, two completely separate venues, you know, and I wanted to, and both of them suffered an income loss, both of them have employees. Could both of them apply, not as an individual business owner, but like as the venues themselves?
So that's where I think they would have to choose. So like for our bridge program, we had last year businesses that, you know, one owner had multiple locations and they had to choose between which location would get the grant. And so that's what we were thinking as well. I really can't think of that situation. Maybe that exists and I just don't know about it.
Yeah, no, I hate to throw a wrench in the works with a hypothetical, but the Dreammaker project, the Dreammaker program, having so many different projects, if you're saying that they wouldn't be disqualified from this based on, and that's just my misunderstanding, then that answers my question. But that answers my concern. Thank you. But the performers being paid tied to a percentage of the tickets, I think that's still something that I think should probably be changed because it's unrealistic based on how my understanding of how venues operate in Eureka. That's all. Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions? All right, I will take it out to public comment to the public for comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment on this item? Greg Gare.
get myself all unmuted. I appreciate the discussion, and I fully supporting people, and I think the Dream Maker project's a wonderful thing. And I also appreciate why you're putting limits on there to avoid people stacking this up and it personally enriching themselves. I think you have a loophole in there that someone may be able to drive a truck through, in that perhaps what I could suggest is that you're looking at exempting nonprofit 501c3 type activities from the cumulative activity. If they have discrete separate events that they have fostered, there is no personal enrichment. Nobody is enriching themselves multiple times. They're not stacking things up because there are no shareholders. There is no equity in a nonprofit. Perhaps what you should look at, rather than talking about individuals, you're not addressing corporations, you're not addressing for-profit businesses. I would suggest that you look at an exemption for nonprofit umbrellas that have separate discrete programs, rather than just removing that exemption, so that you're allowing the nonprofits to continue to be that incubator, but you're also helping prevent somebody from stacking several things up and enriching themselves personally.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council for comments or a motion. Councilmember Bauer.
No, this is a great program. I'd be willing to make a motion, but is it modified? I mean, is it amended with what we talked about? That'd be my question, you know, or can we make the motion and then, you know, with some kind of caveat? I don't know. Any thoughts?
I was like, what was the motion again? It was super simple.
Bob just appeared out of nowhere. I have an answer.
Yeah, so if I may, Madam Mayor, I do believe the motion should specify the modifications that the moving party wants to make in light of the discussion that we've had. And the second would then be in agreement with those if there is a second for the motion.
Want to try that, Councilmember Bauer, or shall I?
Please, be my guest.
I would move to approve the Eureka Art and Culture COVID grant program with 2 corrections. One, that the limitation or the eligibility requirement that performers be paid based on a percentage of sales be removed, stricken, and that the eligibility require, or the, oh gosh, how do you put it? The restriction on single individuals or single programs being one individual only being able to apply for one project if they have multiples, not apply to nonprofits. Did that make sense? Okay.
Made sense to you? Okay, did that make sense to anybody on council to second it?
My second.
All right, Councilmember Arroyo, do you have some discussion on this?
Well, I think the addition of the word individuals clarified for me the individuals, but I am interested in Mr. Gear's input about the corporations, and wondering, City Attorney Black, do you have any thoughts about that? Do you think that indeed constitutes a loophole? And if so, I'd be interested in seeing if the maker of the motion and the seconder would be willing to incorporate that.
Well, I think the word individual, especially as it's been explained here on the record, clearly refers to an actual individual person. And then the description of nonprofits, which can be both corporations or another business form, like in a nonprofit association, pretty much precludes the kind of corporate application that Mr. Gear was talking about. That's the way that I interpret it anyway. And I think that's perfectly legitimate for you to for you to make that restriction. So I don't see profit-making corporations or other for-profit business entities being able to apply. And I don't know if that's the intent, but that's where I think this motion is going right now.
So if I owned a company that was like Natalie's Fancy Knits, and I could demonstrate that my art business had 20% or more loss, and then I owned another business with my 2 business partners, but I wasn't applying as an individual, and that was also an art related business, could I apply twice? I mean, that's I think what we're kind of going for here.
Yeah, and I'm going to bounce that one to Swan, because I think she designed the program, and you know, I'd like to ascertain her intent, and then the council can decide if you agree with that.
So I do think that there are art and culture related businesses that are for profit. Like I'm guessing Savage Henry Comedy Club is for profit, or Broadway Cinemas. So I don't necessarily want to restrict this to nonprofit. I do think we could change the language about individuals that own or have interest in more than one business will be limited to 1 grant. I think we could add language that says there's an exemption for nonprofit umbrellas, and that would cover the Ink People situation or the Humboldt Arts Council situation, where you have these, you know, like the Dream Maker, where you have the umbrella and then you have these like individual groups underneath. The individual groups underneath would still have to meet the other requirements. So they would need the physical commercial address in Eureka, stuff like that. Is that clarify? Did I answer questions?
I think so, because then if I had an interest as an individual in more than one business, I mean, I guess, you know, legally corporations are different, but I don't know. Actually I should push it back to our attorney to answer the question, because I don't know that I can really, I think the likelihood of this being abused is extremely low.
Right.
And it would be a real surprise to see a bunch of art business manipulators try to take advantage of this. But, you know, we just want to make good policy. So any thoughts, City Attorney Black?
Well, I think the way that the motion is phrased right now, you have 2 categories of people who can apply. Those who are operating in a nonprofit business form, and those who are operating as individuals, profit or not. And so those are the 2 categories that are in the running. And that operates to the exclusion of business entities that are on a for-profit model. And so if that's what council wants to do, I think the motion as it stands has done that. And, you know, there could be some tweaking of the program language to make sure that that is what is accomplished at your direction. But for now, I think the motion is sufficient if that's what you want to do.
And so I just wanted to note that Swan was saying you do want to include for-profit businesses, though.
If they're run by individuals.
Okay. So then the sole proprietor is applying rather than the business.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the way I interpret the motion as it was made and modified, is that individuals, whether working for themselves for profit or in a nonprofit category, plus nonprofit business entities, those are the eligible applicants.
Councilmember Moulton, was that your intention when you made your motion? Just to clarify.
I did not intend to exclude for-profit businesses.
But I think what they're saying is that for-profit businesses can apply. It's just the sole proprietor applies, not the business name.
Okay, so
yeah.
So just because something is an LLC, for example, it wouldn't be excluded, but it would be the individual owner that is applying, and therefore that individual couldn't apply for on behalf of multiple companies? Is that
my intention was the business would apply. If an individual has multiple businesses, has multiple venues, they could just apply for one.
Okay.
But it doesn't exclude a company from applying. Like, or somebody from, if the business itself is not a sole proprietorship, would they be excluded?
Correct. No, they would be eligible. Yeah.
Then that is fine with that. That's what I meant. Yeah.
So I saw, okay, Natalie, you're good. City Attorney Black, are we all good with the motion as laid?
Was it Scott that made the motion?
No, it was Councilmember Moulton did. Scott seconded it.
Thank you. Yes, now that Councilmember Moulton has clarified the intent of her motion, and I see a head nod from Councilmember Arroyo, I think we can proceed to a vote.
Excellent. And Assistant City Manager Powell, you got all that right?
Yes.
Watch this over again. Okay. Do we want any further discussion on this, or are we ready for a vote? All right, let's do the roll call.
Councilmember Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
3 yes votes. Councilmembers Castellano and Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And now Economic Development Manager Asbury has another great program to talk about, the Eureka Small Business Rent Relief Bridge Program.
So actually, Economic Development Coordinator Christine Tyson is going to be presenting this item tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to be presenting to you the Eureka Small Business Rent Relief Program. So I'm going to go into a little background. The City of Eureka has set aside $500,000 of ARPA funds to provide grants up to $7,500 to small businesses located in within the City of Eureka to cover business owners' unpaid or pending rent from January 1st of this year through April 30th. And we do want to mention that we do realize that this is coming to you in February, and so we wanted to mention that we will be back paying businesses for the previous months I just mentioned. We offered this program in 2021, and it was a huge success for our businesses locally. Since then, speaking with businesses during the pandemic, businesses stressed their most important needs during the pandemic were their basic costs. And so the city took that and felt that rent and mortgages were the most appropriate way to spend these funds during this time for our businesses. I want to mention that this time of year, January roughly through April, is one of the slowest times for our businesses. And we felt that providing them with something, sometimes their largest costs will push the businesses through during this time. Last year, we assisted 53 businesses with these grants up to $7,500 and spent roughly about $336,000. This funding was from our CARES Act money that we received from the state in regards to the pandemic. And so I wanted to mention that last year's program was a great success, and we're really excited to be able to offer this again. So I'm going to go over a little bit of eligibility requirements for businesses that they need to meet in order to apply for this program. For-profit businesses or a nonprofit entity that has been negatively affected by the pandemic. Applicants must have had a 20% or more reduction in gross revenue resulting from COVID. Business owners must live within Humboldt County. Physical commercial addresses must be in the City of Eureka city limits, and they must have a valid City of Eureka business license. Businesses must have 20 or fewer full-time employees, including the business owner, and sole proprietor and single person companies are eligible for this grant. Businesses must have been in business prior to the pandemic, starting March 1st, 2020. And then businesses with active code violations, home-based businesses, and independent contractors are not eligible for this specific grant. Individuals that own or have interest in one or more, in more than one business will be limited to one grant. I'm going to go over a little bit of the documentation that will be required. Valid government ID, for example, California driver's license, all relevant financial documentation that demonstrates the economic injury to the business during the years of 2021. And we want to mention as well that we will be comparing the years 2019, so pre-pandemic financials, to 2020 financials. This includes, but not limited to, bank statements, tax returns, payroll records, as well as financial statements prepared or reviewed by a certified accountant. We will be requiring a rental lease, mortgage, or past rent payment documentation showing how much rent has been paid in the past for this commercial space, and documentation showing the number of employees. Next, I'm going to go over a little bit about the grant process. First step, obviously, is submitting the grant application. Applicants may fill out the application, including required documents found on our city's website starting tomorrow. And once that applicant is submitted, the Economic Development Department, as well as assistance from our Finance Department, will be going over and overseeing the application. And once the initial application is in review, there might be a possibility of additional documentation requested by the city. And then the final step of the application process is that the grantee's landlord must confirm of the grantee's statements about rent due, provide a W-9 form, and the city will need the grantee's landlord to accept payment on behalf of the grantee. And once that is all accomplished, the City of Eureka will be paying the applicant's rent on their behalf of up to $7,500. So this next slide, I just wanted to touch a little bit about how we're going to market this grant to our businesses. We really encourage being transparent, and we want to make sure that all businesses are aware of this grant. Swan mentioned before on the other grant, these both will be going out tomorrow morning. Our city website will be the first place that you'll be able to find this application and information. Right on the front page, you'll see that on our city news. It'll also be offered under the Economic Development Department. We will be distributing this through our social media accounts. And we're gonna also take advantage of our collaborative entities like Henderson Center Association, the Eureka Chamber, and of course, Eureka Main Street members, sending that out to all their membership and getting the word out to them that way. I just, here on this slide, I also put up what the application looks like, just to give you an idea. And so next, we have motion here, suggested motion for you, and I will turn it back to you, Mayor and Council, for further discussion. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions of Economic Development Project Manager Tyson? Sorry, I get confused with some of the titles sometimes. Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you, and thank you for this. I'm so happy that the city is able to do this for our small businesses to support them through this really difficult time. That's what a blessing. Is there a possibility, a way of just directly communicating with everyone who has a business license? Is there a way to do that like electronically? You don't have to send out something in the mail?
Currently, electronically, we're gathering that information as we speak on the back end, but we do not have everyone's email, for instance, but we are working on that. That's something that Economic Development and Finance have been working on through the city business license process each year. So we've been collecting those, collecting that information from businesses for the last year. But I can send it out through that list that we have. So we can do that. But we will also be sending it out through the ways that I mentioned prior.
Lovely. If that could be added into it, I think you would catch yet more people who might need to take advantage of this.
I could
and as just a general effort towards transparency and being proactive about disseminating information to the public and to specific groups, I think that's the sort of thing that we should be working on, finding ways to create specific mailing lists for areas of interest for the public. But that's not what we're talking about. I just wanted to note that you said that sole proprietors and single person businesses can apply and that independent contractors cannot. And I understand the distinction between those things, but many people use the term independent contractor and sole proprietor interchangeably. People who are a sole proprietor often call themselves independent contractors. So I would just suggest that in your marketing that you define independent contractor so people don't count themselves out just through a misunderstanding of the nomenclature. That's my suggestion. I'll make the motion if you show me the thing.
We have to go through public comment and stuff.
Oh, of course. Sorry.
You're so excited. I'm also excited about that. Do we have any, are we making any efforts to reach out to non-English speaking business owners?
Not directly, but we had, just speaking on last year, we had a large amount of businesses that were Spanish speaking that we were able to work through. And we never came into a problem, but we could definitely make a larger effort to do that, I think. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think we can find somebody who can help get the word out to that community, because they often miss out on other programs, especially some of those big federal and state programs that were just really intimidating and we had to do it so quickly that this one maybe would be a little bit more approachable for them. I saw that grant application. That looks, doable. Any other questions? All right. Do we have any public comment on this item? I don't see any. All right, then I will bring it back for a motion or discussion. Oh, thank you for putting it up. So for easy reference, Councilmember Arroyo.
I move to approve the Eureka Small Business Rent Relief Bridge Program.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Awesome. Do we want any further discussion? If not, let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
3 yes votes. Council members Castellano and Burgell absent. Motion carries.
Hey, I'm so happy to see this. I've been talking to folks recently about how the state and federal funding support for COVID has been going away. And yet COVID isn't. So the impacts are still there. So yay for City of Eureka for continuing to do that. Next up, we have Director Millar is going to talk to us about the budget process overview.
As soon as we get Councilmember Castellano back.
Oh, she's already back. I'm sorry, I saw her there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. It is past 9 p.m., so it's a perfect time to present financial information. So tonight's presentation will go fairly quickly. It's to kick off the 22-23 budget process. So the first part is going over the budget schedule. And then the second half is a quick 2021 review. So here we are tonight to talk about the budget process and then to look back at one fiscal year. At our next council meeting, we will present the mid-year review. This is where departments project out where they think they'll be at the end of June with their budget. Then I'm hoping by the end of March that we have the proposed budget document for 22-23 ready to be posted on the websites. At that first meeting in April, we hope to have our first and only budget study session. And then if everything goes well, I'm hoping at that second meeting in April that we adopt both the budget and the fee schedule for the following fiscal year. So the second half is the 2021 review. So first of all, we're gonna look at our major funds. That includes the water fund, the wastewater fund, harbor, building, the internal service funds, and last but not least, the general fund. So when we're looking at revenues and expenses tonight, revenues are gonna be shown as negative numbers.
Can I ask a question? Are you using slides right now that you're supposed to be
sorry,
showing us?
Yes, that's awkward, sorry. Is it showing right now?
Nope, not at all. There we go. Now we see it.
So none of this showed up, right?
Nope.
Okay, well, real quick on the schedule. So the second meeting in February will be the mid-year review. And then the budget document should be done at the end of March. We'll have our first study session at the first meeting in April, and then hopefully adopt at that second meeting. So let's go over the 2021 numbers. We're going to look at the water fund, the wastewater fund, the harbor fund, the building fund, the internal service funds as a group, and then the general fund. So tonight the numbers will be presented, or revenues are going to be shown as negative numbers. That's how we treat them as accountants. And expenditures or expenses are shown as positive numbers. When we're comparing our budget numbers to actuals, we have what is called a variance. And a favorable variance or a positive variance is an increase in reserves or an increase in fund balance. You'll know that it's a favorable variance by seeing those numbers in parentheses. And then we have, and I'll also use the thumbs up emoji when it's a good thing. And then unfavorable variance, such as having your expenditures come in more than what you budgeted for, shows a decrease in reserves. I will show a thumbs down when that happens. So we're going to begin with the water fund. In 2021, the revenue budget for the water fund was roughly 9.3 million. The actual came in over 9.4 million. So we had a favorable variance. We'll give that a thumbs up. On the expenditure side, we budgeted about 10.2 million. Actuals came in just over 10.2, so a slight negative variance, so a thumbs down. But when we compare revenues to expenses, we anticipated $920,000 in negative, or in using fund balance to mainly for capital projects. What actually happened was we utilized about $780,000 in fund balance. So ultimately that was a good thing. We used less than we anticipated. The next is the wastewater fund. In this fund, the two divisions are wastewater treatment and wastewater collections. So for 2021, the budget for for revenue was about 11.1 million. Unfortunately, that came in just over 11 million, so we had a negative variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted about 12.4 million in expenditures. That came in just under 11.9 million, so we saw a large favorable variance of over $500,000. So when we compare revenues to expenses, again, the budget, we budgeted a deficit mainly to finance CIP projects. The actual numbers showed less of a deficit, so overall it was a favorable variance. Next, we have the Harbor Fund. Operations in the Harbor Fund include the marina, the wharfinger, and certain properties like the Fisherman's Terminal building. For 2021, we budgeted about a million. Unfortunately, revenues only exceeded 900,000, so we saw a negative variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted just over $1 million. Actuals came in under $1 million, so a positive variance. But overall, even though we tried to balance the budget, the actual numbers came in with a negative variance, or we lost fund balance in 2021 in the Harbor Fund. Next, we have the Building Fund. In the Building Fund, we get revenues for permit fees. Operations include going over building plans, as well as going out and inspecting construction projects. On the revenue side, we budgeted about $1 million in revenue. Actual numbers came in just under $1 million, so a negative variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted about 1.1 million. Actual expenditures were only $1 million, so a positive variance. And when we compare revenues to expenses, we anticipated deficit spending. The actual was, we had just a bit of expenditures over revenues, and ultimately we had a positive variance. And then the internal service funds. So this is a group of funds where the operations are essentially serving internal departments. These divisions include the city manager, the city clerk, the city attorney, finance, personnel, IT, equipment operations, facility operations, and risk management. So on the revenue side, we anticipated about 8 million in revenue. That came in above 8 million for a positive variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted about 10.8 million, only spent about 10.4 million for a nice positive variance. And when you compare budget to actual, there was a positive variance. Just to remind everybody, we took advantage of the reserves in these funds in the 2021 fiscal year. This helped us avoid doing layoffs. Projections in this fiscal year were really bad due to the pandemic. But ultimately, we didn't have to spend as much in reserves as we first anticipated. So last but not least, we have the general fund. So in the general fund, total revenue was budgeted at about $30 million. Actual revenue came in over $34 million. So we had a very large positive variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted about 28.3 million. We spent about just under 29 million, so a negative variance. But when you compare our revenues to expenses, we thought we would see a surplus of about 1.8 million. Ultimately, that surplus was about 5.6 million, most likely a record, and a very positive variance. This might make you think that we are flush with cash, but if we go back to 1920, we did lose about 3 million in reserves. We had a very bad year in 1920, mainly that second half when the pandemic first hit. So that was not a good thing. So this 2021 result is a great thing because not only did it make up for the 1920 fiscal year, but it also added to the bottom line. Going forward, I expect to continue to run surpluses and to build up those reserves to a point that we haven't seen for 20 years. So that concludes my presentation tonight. I would be happy to answer any questions.
That was a great way to end your presentation tonight. Too bad we can't just end the meeting now. That would be awesome. But
it was a very bad way to start my presentation, so try to balance it.
And we have 15 minutes before we have to extend the meeting. So let's just have questions first and see if we can get through this, and then we'll figure that out. Does anybody have questions for Director Millar? Councilmember Bauer.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for the good news. It's nice that city is fiscally sound. So thank you, Director Millar. Appreciate it.
I remember that was a hard decision to go into dip into those reserves, but any other questions? All right. Do we have any comments from the audience on this item here? I do not see any. So again, I want to emphasize, I remember how hard it was and how many people I talked to about, oh, this is so much we're dipping into the reserves. And I was told by several finance people, that's what reserves are for. And it worked.
Yeah, so. Mind you, we cut over 14% that year too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I know. It was a tough year. Anybody else have any comments? We're just receiving the report, so I don't think we need a motion for that. But Councilmember Castellano?
For sure, thank you for this good news. If we continue forward this way, I mean, for sure, it may affect how we budget, but and maybe this is just what we're going to get into the future, but what do you think the possibilities might be for kind of using just our kind of financial, or more the the fact that we're more stable in our finances?
Well, one of the reasons why we're running surpluses for a few years is because we just adopted some MOUs with COLAs, and as those COLAs get implemented, that surplus should go down. And at the same time, certain funds like the Harbor Fund and the Abatement Fund are they're in really poor positions. So I'm hoping to use some of those surpluses to pay those funds or pay down those funds. I think I can achieve that over the next 2 years. After that, I still expect to run possibly multi-million-dollar surpluses. And I think at that point, especially when we're further away from what is hopefully the end of the pandemic and what should be the new normal, I think we will have, some extra, or there'll be enough extra cash to do bigger projects that were really never within that were never possible before. Looking back at 1920, the reason why those deficits were so large were because we had to do some emergency projects like that Myrtle Avenue project. And we had to do it. And, what that meant was we drew down reserves. So I'm hoping that going forward that we will have, these pots of money stored away so that we can not only manage, emergency infrastructure projects, but also to have money set aside for things like, going above and beyond what we've been able to do in the past. So I do think it's a new future for Eureka with Measure H. And unless something goes sideways, we should expect to have a very positive financial position.
Nice. Do we want to close on that? think that's a nice way to close on it. Okay, it is 9:19. We have just a couple more items, the city manager's report and then the council reports, and discussion of future agenda items. Does somebody want to extend the meeting till like 9:45? We'll probably be done before that, but.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have to do the roll call or can we all just do this? All right. Okay, so we will move forward as future agenda items. Does anybody have anything they wanted to get on a future agenda? All right, then we will move on to the city manager's report.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So as I discussed at the property exempt property presentation, we are going to be doing a hybrid meeting next Wednesday, which, you know, council members don't feel comfortable, they can still stay at home, but everything that we're hearing is that we're getting over the hump. And so just want to get the temperature of thinking about moving our council meetings back to a hybrid format for future ones. So, I mean, what I'll do is, you know, I just wanted to put that out there. I will send out an email and get individual responses from you guys to discuss what the potential for that is. And it's still pending how our numbers, that could change. So we don't want to do it hastily or anything like that, but I just wanted to put it out there. The other item I want to talk about is electric scooters. So staff has been working with Bird. It's an electric scooter company that provides rentals of electric scooters. Fortuna has entered into agreement with them. We have entered into agreement. We've had discussions with the Eureka Main Street about the potential for this, and we plan on bringing representatives from Bird to discuss some of the concerns that the Main Street District has. But staff does see this as an opportunity for some alternative modes of transportation to get people to and from likely parking lots to their place of business, maybe. But that would be one of the options. And then we will have that discussion with Main Street, and then we'll try them out as a trial trial period of a year or 6 months, see how that works, make any adjustments or decide that it's not working. But it will be a trial period. And right now we're looking at potentially the end of March to do that. And we'd like to do some promotional opportunities for this. And so when that does happen, we'll come back to council and have more discussions about the potential for Bird scooters here in Eureka.
You may have questions. All right. Thank you, City Manager Slattery.
Katie, you look like you just can't wait to ride a scooter.
It's pretty fun. I'm not going to lie.
All right. Thank you.
Right on. And now we are on to council reports. So we will go ahead and start with Councilmember Castellano.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Let's see. I, over the last couple of weeks, have continued to attend the Community Economic Resilience Consortium meetings, both the regular meetings and a special meeting related to housing. We were having so much fun beautifying Wabash that we went out and did more last weekend. And so if you notice some new plants out there, just want to thank Kathleen and Kelly and Stan for coming out. And, you know, these are folks who live in the neighborhood who've been just coming out to help plant things. And Kathleen and Kelly brought plants from their own gardens to plant along Wabash. It was really cool. And of course, thanks to Robin Prasker for making sure all of the kind of the details were taken care of, like wood chips and waivers and shovels and things like that. Let's see, I met with the incoming poet laureate. I attended 2 Eureka Main Street meetings to listen to business concerns. And tomorrow I'm going into a school
to share with middle school students about what it's like being involved with city government and being on city council. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Moulton.
Hello, thank you. I haven't had any meetings between this meeting and the last meeting that were out of the ordinary, but I do have a 2x2 with Eureka City Schools coming up next week. If anybody wants to talk about what's going on in the schools, so that I can take that into the meeting with us for conversation, I'm always available. And I wanted to reiterate that the multimodal transportation meeting about that, the Multimodal Transportation Center proposed for Old Town is happening next Wednesday at 6 p.m. and that is available on Zoom for people to watch. And just as another PSA, the city often doesn't know what is happening unless somebody tells them when it comes to things like cracked sidewalks and potholes. So don't hesitate to call up to City Hall at 441-4203 or stop by the front desk there. Suzanne is super helpful. So, the city, everybody wants to fix stuff, but sometimes you got to let them know what's going on. And that's it. That's me. Oh, and just on a personal note, my summer camp has been I run a summer camp for middle school girls, and we've been taking 2 years off or not off, but not in person. And we are working on a plan to actually go back all out to the river together this year and expand our age range to kind of catch some of the kids that didn't get to be with us when we were working in hybrid or as camp in a box. And that's intimidating, but also just super inspiring. I'm very excited to get back together with the women of North Star Quest Camp. Thank you.
Yay. Councilmember Arroyo.
Well, we had our county city 2x2 meeting, which was with supervisors Bone and Bass, and that was helpful to kind of just talk through upcoming projects and opportunities. And as always, it's interesting to hear from the county administrative officer and from the supervisors. So that continues to happen. And then Humboldt Transit Authority is in the middle of some exciting new work, definitely looking at hydrogen fueled buses as an option in the future, and quite a few other rather exciting things in the hopper. So definitely trying to continue to make transit better. And our meeting is tomorrow morning. So those who are interested can join. We're going to have a hybrid meeting. So it seems like that's the way things are going, is more organizations are starting to offer that option of meeting in person or meeting online. So beyond that, I've been just doing a lot of work in the grant writing realm in my other roles, and just trying to make our whole region a better place. So it's exciting to be able to do that. And sometimes I feel like I wish I could do it for the city. So maybe many years down the line, I'll be able to be a city employee doing that. But for right now, I'm not. So, well, I am and I'm not. So anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity, though, to do grant development in this region. And there's a lot of synergy there between all kinds of organizations. So it's really cool to see. We do live in a pretty awesome place, y'all. So I will end my report there.
Thank you very much. And now Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you. I had an RCEA meeting, Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and we do have a couple of openings on the Community Advisory Committee. So anybody that's interested in energy and alternative energy, check out the website and please apply. I also want to say, I don't know if you've noticed, but energy prices are high, and it has affected our our organization there, but it's not our fault. It's fuel prices in general. So don't beat us up about that. February 12th, was that 2 weekends away? Cooper Gulch cleanup, 9:30. Be there. It's going to be fun. We're going to try and get rid of as many invasive plant species as we can, pick up trash. It'll be great. And there's already been a lot of interest, so I'm excited about that. I just want to say one thing about, we always seem to get people that think of Old Town as, it's a horrible, scary place with, litter everywhere. And I work in Old Town and I have nothing but good experiences down there. I don't see nearly the devastation that others are quick to point out to us. And I'd also just say, I'm full of quotes today, but I heard this a Dana Point planning commissioner say at a Cal Cities meeting, if you don't love the place you're in, you're probably living in the wrong place. I thought that was the most beautiful saying ever that he thought of. And that's the way I feel about Eureka and Old Town. And then lastly, today's the Chinese New Year, Year of the Tiger. Happy New Year to everybody. So thanks.
Thank you. And this is where I would normally say I will see y'all in 2 weeks, but I will see you in a little over a week. But Natalie has something to say.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to forget this, but I wrote it in cryptic text to myself. I just wanted to acknowledge something kind of serious and also invite you to join me in doing something hopeful. So our community lost a wonderful person, Nicole Nada, right at the end of January, and she was recently relocated to Eureka, and someone who did a lot of incredible work in our community. And she lost her life to cancer, and I'm inviting everyone to donate blood in the month of February, partly in her honor and her memory, because she had to have some blood transfusions towards the end of her life, and really we talked about how supplies were really critically low. And so I thought it was a way for folks to give a little bit to recognize how much that is a gift of life. And even if you didn't know Nicole, I encourage us to sign up to give blood this month. And I know I will. So the blood bank really needs it right now.
Always a good message. So with that, I'll see you all in a week. Well, a little over a week. Bye.